Hey, are we live?
We are.
Great, thanks, Tiffany. This is the May 14th, 2025 meeting of the Housing Advisory Board. This is a hybrid meeting. We'll have people attending via Zoom. I'm calling the meeting to order. I'm Michael Chasey, the Chair of Housing Advisory Board. And we'll do a roll call. So Corinne Hopkins.
Here.
Stephen Hennessy. Not here yet. Aaron Clearman.
Here.
Cindy Torres. Newest member. Philip Grover. Here. We do have a quorum. There's 5 members present. We hope maybe another one will call in or show up live. Quick review of the agenda. We will be approving the minutes as our next agenda item. That's number 3. Followed by public participation. We'll have open comment with options for either in-person or online participation. That's item 4. Item 5, matters from the board. There are several. Pleased to have Molly Taylor from Housing and Human Services here tonight to do a staff presentation on the manufactured housing strategy, which is a council priority. We'll have discussion and feedback among the board. This is a non-voting item, informational item. We'll have an icebreaker to welcome our new members from Corinne Hopkins. That's item B. Then we'll be electing a new chair and vice chair for Housing Advisory Board. We'll discuss the next member quarterly update to council. We'll have a report from our new subcommittee. Stephen Hennessy is now here, so we have 6 out of 7 members present. Welcome, Chip.
Hi.
Our subcommittee on housing solutions for homelessness, our work plan review. That's Corinne and Chip. We'll be presenting that for discussion. We'll be reviewing our work plan. And that will be it for item 5 on the agenda. Item 6, matters from staff. Item 7, meeting debrief and calendar check for our next meetings. And we'll attempt to adjourn before 9 o'clock. Just a couple of cool things from the last month. We did have, we were invited to join 2 project tours of new affordable housing projects in Boulder. One is High Point in South Boulder, a senior residence on the site of a former church, and a really wonderful project.
I thought it was Hilltop.
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 I always get that wrong. I'm sorry. Let's correct the record. And that, I think, has 40 units, 60 transitional homeless, and the rest for affordable for seniors. We got to meet some residents. It's a beautiful project. Holds the Hilltop very well. They did preserve part of the historic church, which was also cool. And congratulations to BHP for that. And then a week later, BHP had an open house to debut their new Raleigh Flat project that site of the former Raleigh Sports Club at 29th and Bluff. And it's 100 units of affordable housing, with I think 10 of those reserved for transitional people transitioning from homelessness. Really wonderful project, high density, but doesn't feel like it. Beautiful courtyard, really efficient use of space thanks to the single stair concept. And for those who think that nothing ever happens with affordable housing in Boulder, they should go check those out. It's a really good projects. With that, we'll go on to approval of minutes. Our last official meeting was March 26th. We actually had a training last month. It was not an official meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the meetings from March 26th? That's 2024. It was actually
I'll make a motion.
2025.
A motion to approve.
Okay. We have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
There's none.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0. It's time for public participation. I don't see any of the members of the public here in person. Do we have anybody waiting online?
No, we don't.
No one waiting online, so no public comment tonight. And we can go to item 5 on the agenda. Molly Taylor is going to present the manufactured housing strategy. So take it away, Molly. Pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Let me manage my technology here for a second. Make sure I can share with y'all. Sorry?
Did you want to switch around the icebreaker or?
Oh, icebreaker. Are we going to switch the agenda?
Yeah.
To the icebreaker.
I told him that you wanted to be part of the icebreaker.
I just, the facilitator in me was offended that the icebreaker came. We wanted to be
That's
respectful
why I
of the
met you.
time.
You facilitated a neighborhood meeting.
So,
Okay, we're gonna do the icebreaker. We're switching out
Okay.
A and B. Number 5.
All right. How much time do we have? Do you want to participate?
may I, or does staff?
We'll participate.
Okay, so basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hand out these little like prompts. And we'll just kind of go around and you'll pick one of the prompts and like answer it. And it's like, what was your first paying job? And it's, you know, it could be like Dairy Queen, but somebody else, if somebody else is like, I was shot out of a canyon at a circus, which is unique and unusual, chime in. But if you also worked at Dairy Queen, whatever. And sometimes there's a few questions like, salt or sweet, which one do you like? Everybody, does that make sense? Here. And we'll just kind of see what we have time for. You should take a few. Yeah, just take a couple and then you can pick one. Do you want to start, Molly? And we'll just go around in a circle. Okay, I love these. These are so fun.
And so just to clarify, so I heard it correctly, I love how well these are done. This is gorgeous, look at this. I read it, I answer it, or
Yeah.
read it and make somebody else answer it?
No, you answer it.
I answer it.
And others might chime in as well.
Okay. Can you speak more than one language? Which one and how well? No. I'm still trying to master English. I did study French and Spanish. And for lack of immersion in trying, I remember 10 words.
Is anybody fluent in anything else?
Specific one.
Yeah, everybody else is fluent.
What is specific one?
I have an unusual language,
What's yours?
Kiswahili.
Oh, wow, that would make
I'm
sense.
not very fluent in, but at least
I haven't spoken.
Say a couple things, like what does it sound like?
Hakuna Matata.
I mean, we all speak Swahili.
How did you, why?
Peace Corps in Kenya. But they all spoke English.
All right, mine is, what is your favorite local hike? And I would say currently the Anemone Trail, which is always, I always have to think about how to say that.
Where's that?
It's across from Sanitas Trailhead is the Centennial Trailhead. And you can either go east to the Red Rocks or you can go west to the Anemone Trail. Anemone.
And the wildflowers are primo this year.
It's great.
And is it like a loop?
Yeah.
How long is the loop?
Like 2.5 miles,
Nice.
something like that.
Very cool. All right, mine is, what is something that I am proud of? And given that last weekend was Mother's Day, I would say that being a parent is probably the most challenging and rewarding thing I've done. So I'm very proud of being a parent.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Can I go now? What's the best concert you've been to? Well, I love music.
Oh.
There's a lot of choices there. I'll pick a fairly recent one. Last fall, there was a Last Waltz revisited with this all-star cast of people like Lucas Nelson at the Boulder Theater, and it was like unbelievably great. And they did other music besides the band. They did some of their own songs. It was a really wonderful concert.
Do you have any pets? What are their names? I have a chocolate lab named Coda. And the reason I was late is because as I was getting ready to leave, I heard the chirping noise from the low battery on the smoke detector. And my dog was terrified.
Aw.
He was shaking and his tail was under. And I felt like I had to get up there and remove the battery, and then that didn't work. So I had to like jack it out, and he's like crying. So, the things you do for your dogs.
Of course, but did he make it through the lightning and thunder? Okay.
He's fine with that, but this chirping
That
noise, he was
that's-
terrified.
I know.
He was terrified. Here's it differently than you do. I was like, I gotta fix this before I go, or else he's gonna stroke while I'm gone.
Let's see, do you have any phobias? To what? Yes, to spiders.
Does it matter if they're big or small? They're just spiders.
The bigger the worse.
It's like, I know they do good things, but they creep me out too. It's like, it's not rational.
With your kids, did you have to ever hold
Rosie, I didn't. They did.
Rosie's a spider.
Rosie's like a big tarantula at the,
butterfly pavilion?
and they actually have like a bunch of different Rosies, but they let kids and parents hold Rosie. Did you?
Mm-hmm. Several times I didn't particularly care for it. I was like,
Question is, have you ever met someone famous? And answer is not really. I met Aaron Brockett one time. Mayor of Boulder. And it was actually really cool for me because I wasn't involved in politics at the time. And I decided I would show up to a urban planning book club. And almost everyone ended up not going. So it was just me and Aaron and whoever organized it. At the house. And I just was like, I just met someone on city council. He wasn't mayor at the time. And I just thought that was super cool. And that's when I kind of learned that city council people are super accessible and really friendly. And that was a nice experience.
Yeah, I know this isn't, can you top this, but can I?
Oh, yeah, can you tell that? Oh, sorry. Part of the reason I chose this question over the other one is I thought it was more interesting because I was curious what famous people other people.
All right, in 1980, I interviewed Donald Trump.
No kidding.
Whoa.
Wow, he's such an asshole. I'm sorry.
You're on the public record.
He was tearing down the Von White Teller store to build a Trump Tower, and I was doing a historic preservation story, and I called him up. I wasn't in person, but he answered the phone. He answered his own phone. And he asked me to explain why it should be torn down. I gave him a whole bunch of artistic reasons, and he said, that's really persuasive. I'm gonna tear it down anyway.
if anybody
Now
has,
you're the chair of the housing advisory board.
Yeah, so
And again, not to top you, but I went to Mark Welling's high school. Mark Wellick went to my high school. He's older than I am.
Any other celebrities?
I met Jared,
Okay.
like the subway Jared,
Yeah,
Oh, is that Jared? I thought you meant Jared
way
Polis.
before he, I don't know what he was doing in his life, but before all of that controversy where my husband and I were on a road trip somewhere in like nowhere, Colorado, we were at a gas station. Jared pulls up and we were like, is that Jared? Because I was like, commercials were all over the place.
I think he lives in Canyon City now.
Yeah.
Got to meet Madeline Albright.
Oh,
right,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm. She grew up in Colorado, right?
I miss her.
I think she did. She went to DU.
Pretty good, yeah.
Hmm.
But you didn't meet her in Colorado or?
No, I met her at a hotel in DC.
Was she nice?
Very. I was just with a group of folks and she walks in and it's like, you know who that is? And I went over and I had somebody, it was like another congressman, I couldn't take a picture of us. And then she ended up signing it when she did her book tour of the town cover.
Nice.
So it was pretty cool. Yeah, I posted it on Facebook and said, somebody thought it was Margaret Thatcher. And I was like, no, that's our famous lady.
My grandfather used to be a trainer for the WWE, so I used to, or WWF. So like Macho Man, his brother, Mr. Perfect, they used to come and hang out at the house all the time.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, I've got pictures of them, like just in regular clothes. They were the nicest people. Very soft spoken, just really cool people.
That's cool.
I didn't realize it was such a big deal because I was.
Right.
Now I'm back, I'm like, man, should have taken advantage of that.
Did not know that.
Mhm.
My dad was on Animal Planet for a couple years, so. I guess he's probably or less famous, but more closely related.
Next question.
Anything else? Yep. Next question. What is your favorite food or cuisine?
Whatever Tiffany orders.
We're having it out.
I think it was Southern Indian cuisine.
Is that the same as like Nepalese? Oh, is that what you just said?
More northern. But it's spicier because it's hotter. It's where Thali comes from, where you basically you go to a Thali restaurant and they just come around with big buckets, dal or whatever. And just keep refilling your plate.
Is there any place in town or around here that serves the type that you like?
I mean, they'll serve a version of it, but it's not the same as being a bucket. Particularly when, meal costs 50 cents
Right.
and it's all you can eat.
When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to work in zoos like my father did.
Any particular animal you wanted to?
I'm a big fan of red pandas and this animal called a binturong. It's a Asian. They call them tree bears. They're really big. They have a prehensile tail and they kind of smell like popcorn.
They smell like popcorn.
They're cool.
You did get up close and personal with these animals. When you were-
Oh yeah, I grew up in northern Pennsylvania where the zoo that he worked at didn't have after hours caretaking, so our house became after hours caretaking. So yeah, everything from bobcat cubs to alligators in the basement, like we had everything in the house. It was my mom hated it.
Alligators in the basement, wrestlers in the living room.
Yeah, my mom hated it.
I come to your house.
That's great preparation for managing that.
What was the name of the tree bear?
A binturong.
Ventura.
Binturong. Very cool.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be the boss, like my grandma, which I often remind my boss that that was my dream, and now I have my dream job. He does love, so that's good.
What is your dream job now?
Yeah, it'd probably be to like own a taco truck or something,
That'd be fun.
right?
But you said you had it.
I'm the boss.
Oh, you got the boss.
Don't tell my boss. I just wanted to be in charge of something. Do we have time to do one more? Do you have another one?
Okay.
Oh, I do. You
Another
gave
one?
me a stack.
Choose one.
What is my favorite season? It is right now. It is right now. It is the smell in the morning. It is the little bit of longer afternoon, evening. It is sunlight angling across trees at sunset. It is green. It is hummingbirds showing up.
I like looking at I like looking in the closet at all the clothes I'm not wearing. Don't go any overcoats.
What international city would you like to live in? Oh, we talk about this a lot in my family. The current top one is London. We have some family there and near there, and it would just be cool to be there, but I don't know. There's so many places I haven't been that I'd love to go and live for a while. Greece, like if it's in Mamma Mia, that kind of that part of Greece. Music singing in the streets, wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know. Anybody else want to live someplace international?
Yes.
Yeah, because they got great housing.
For 4 years, I'd like to go to someone else.
There's a YouTube channel I like called Not Just Bikes. And it's a guy talking about urban transit and housing, mostly transit. And he spends a lot of time in Europe going from city to city and talking about the solutions they've come up with. And I see those videos, I'm always thinking, oh, I'd love to go live there for a season, you know, like there's one in Bergen, Norway, and Utrecht, Netherlands, and Vauban in Germany, I think.
One in Freiburg, yeah.
And so I would love to do we could do a big field trip where like, you know, we visit all these places and see all the ways that other people are figuring out how to make good use of land.
Now, that would be an icebreaker.
What is the best or most recent book you have read? Well, it's a very timely question because I just had book club last night and we talked about 2 books. One is called James, which is kind of took Huck Finn, but took it from the perspective of the slave. And it was really good. And it just recently won the Pulitzer Prize for Literature for 2025. So highly recommend it. And then we read this book called Playground, which is about AI and French Polynesia, and it was, so it was good.
Like a nonfiction?
No, it was actually fiction, so.
Who's the author of James?
Percival
So
Everett, that sounds right. So.
Just finished The Day the World Came to Town.
Is it good?
Yes, very good.
Is that about,
After 9/11, when all the planes had to, at the land.
what's it called? The Day the World?
The Day the World Came to Town. And it's about Gander, Newfoundland. And how this little small town like hosted all these planes and all these people. It was really, there were some very comical things in there, but it was really good.
So nonfiction.
It's nonfiction.
it was made into a play, wasn't it? It was. Sounds great. I read All the Beauty in the World, which is a memoir of a museum guard at the Metropolitan Museum. It was pretty good. I volunteered at the Denver Art Museum, and I was there yesterday. I asked all the guards if they had read it. They said they bought one copy and then passed it around the whole staff. And the one comment I got like a lot of different comments. One guy said, it's basically a bathroom read. I guess I was more impressed than you were. My question is, have you lived abroad? The answer is no, but 1984, I actually took a sabbatical and rode my bike across Europe for 4 months, which was fantastic. And I didn't want to leave, but I did, so that's why I'm here. And I went to, I think, 7 countries, including Yugoslavia, which no longer exists.
Wow.
Did you plot it all out, or did you just like?
No, I started to, I had this bicycle guidebook, you know, it was like you didn't have Google Maps.
Right.
And after a week, I realized the book really was a bad book. It didn't have good routes or destinations. So from there, I just winged it. Bought these giant maps and plotted out day to day. It was really fun. It's great.
Were you on your own or were you
I
with
was on my
somebody?
own. I had a lot of people. And it costs like $25 a day.
Did you sleep in a tent or hostels or?
Mostly hostels, but pensions were like $8
Yeah.
a night. Mostly I like staying in the city center, so I'd stay in the pension.
I would say that's living abroad.
Yeah.
Probably.
4 months.
And back in those days, you couldn't like
Talk about listening.
text people at home either. They thought you were dead.
Oh, no.
What is your favorite way to escape and refresh? I like to snowboard. The perks of working for yourself, or I have a partner, but not having a boss, is that if you're not having a busy day, it's pretty easy to hop up to Eldora and get in a few laps. So that's my jam. So unlike some people here, I'm actually a little disappointed to see the warm weather. I miss.
Sorry about that. It's a spring thing. You'll be back though.
Am I a morning person or a night person? I'm most definitely a morning person. 3 and 5 in the morning. I love. I grew up with my grandma and she was a really early riser and working as a janitor, getting up really early. I just love it. Yeah. It's quiet.
So are we keeping you up here by?
Speak softly.
So funny, I don't think of myself as either a morning or a night. I'm like a middle person. I don't like that 5 a.m. Anything before 5 a.m. is in the middle of the night for me. That's too early. Pretty much anything past like 10 is also the middle of the night. Middle.
Hit my stride around 10 a.m. I'm done by like 9 p.m. It's good.
Prompt reminds me of a joke. If someone asks you if you're a dog person, a cat person, or a snake person, that person's a snake person.
Not supposed to give it away.
Do you prefer coffee or tea? I am unable to drink coffee, despite the fact that I love it. So I specialize in tea that tastes like coffee. I have a whole library of different options that I enjoy.
Like what?
There's, well, Ticino is probably the most widely recognized brand, but there's something called Dandy Blend. Celestial Seasonings has roast aroma. I have a French chicory root that comes from, I can't remember the brand of it. And then Nude Foods has a version of this. And so I generally brew one of them and then put a scoop of Dandy Blend on top of it and top it off with oat milk. And it's pretty good.
Have you tried the mushroom version?
Yeah, some of the other Bryes,
Are they
there's one
good?
called, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, like it's a little more work. It's like a little like more challenging, but it's still good. I like it.
As good as coffee?
As good as coffee, right? Except, it's better. It likes me more.
Who's coffee? Just curious.
What's that?
Just wondering who is a coffee person versus who is a tea person.
So I took a barista class at Ozo.
You get to make the
Oh, yeah.
patterns with the foam.
Yeah.
When did you do that?
A couple months ago. I was first in the class by like 50 years.
We're gonna get you another job. This retirement thing is just crazy.
I drink instant coffee like twice a day. I've been doing that for 15 years.
You're off the board, but
My parents always tell me whenever I talk, they're like, "You are so impulsive." I think it's disgusting that I do that. My friends, I show up camping, like they're like, "Why do you have such a large container?" I just brought it.
what brand is the coffee?
I actually Nescafe is okay, but there's it's that yellow container. They make espresso too. I don't know the name of it. It's like it's like $1 more. But I don't know. I like coffee for the medicinal effects, not the taste. That's why
You have a hot water dispenser by your sink too?
Yeah, I have the kettle and I just pour it in, add the powder, and then add a little more hot water, and coffee's ready. Yeah,
The luxury coffee maker market is wasted on you.
I know.
All right, what show are you currently binge watching? Andor. Yeah. That's a good one.
What's it
I love
called?
Andor. Andor is part of the Star Wars prequel.
Oh,
It's the only Disney Plus Star Wars that's worth watching. But I'm watching it with my son.
Aw,
So good.
Who inspires you? I don't have like a specific person. More anybody that I run across, any individual that's fighting for something that they believe deep down that benefits the world as a whole. Inspires me.
Yeah.
fabulous answer.
Cool. Thanks for playing.
Yeah,
Great,
that was great.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks for organizing.
May you use them in good help again.
Now, back to business. It seems like you have a cookie. Molly Taylor is going to do our presentation on manufactured housing strategy. I'll be right back.
Maybe time to choose.
I'll get my screen. There.
A few of us are getting cookies. I got one already.
Yeah. Cookies were, my cookies quite good.
Jay, will you bring me one?
It's so funny, it, notice I have like 16 things open and ask me what screen I want.
I like it that it does that now. I think that was a COVID feature that got added because I think too many people.
Now, how do I get rid of the little stuff about from the Zoom on here? Oh, you guys don't see it. Never
Right, so you'll just
mind.
want to hit your presentation.
Yep.
You should
Never
be good.
mind. Okay. Already still getting stuff. Oh, there we go.
There's 3 cookies left and I took one. Does anybody want to split this?
Plenty for me, thank you.
There's cookies still left.
A couple left,
Oh,
but
I'll go grab them.
I'd split this with somebody if there's not enough.
All right. Thank you, Housing Advisory Board, for having me. I'm chatty, but I'll try and not be as chatty as I should be. But Jay told me that gets to be my draft run, my beta test of this presentation. As it is a council priority, it next goes to council. So I invite you to critique it, ask questions, just help me make it better. And I appreciate you for having me here tonight. So I'm Molly Taylor and I am a senior housing policy project manager. And I got to come back to work with Jay in December of 2023. I use the term come back to work in that as Michael knows, I worked at the city in the 1990s, in the early 1990s. I was the first neighborhood liaison for the city of Boulder. And loved that role and loved getting to know the neighborhoods of Boulder. If anybody wants to do a walk any day, I can show you alleys. I can play zip code person with you. I can tell you who lived where, and what was going on at their houses. So it was a marvelous way to really get to know what is now my city. I got into housing in about 2015 after I did community development for the city of Santa Fe after college, came here, worked on community development, conflict resolution and facilitation. And then I went off and did a lot of freelance things and taught at CU Denver and just had a really good time. Not really good for anybody who wants to retire, but it was really a good time in my career. I learned a lot, I had a lot of things to do. But then in 2015, I was invited to be the facilitator for or put on, actually, I had to plan the whole thing, the Yes in My Backyard conference. It was the very first time in the United States we hosted this conversation. It was a little bit of the brainchild of the then Board of Realtors director here, Ken Hotard, if anyone remembers that name, and Will Tour, who was our county commissioner, or mayor, goes way back, because they were opining at that time, reading the writing on the wall, that housing is the biggest challenge for cities going forward. And when you listen to the people who come together as YIMBY, we had people from Europe and Australia and, all areas of the United States here. you begin to feel a sense that, or I begin to feel, speak for me, I began to feel that if we don't solve this problem, that our cities are going to be pretty rugged places in the next 20 or 50 years. And I think people are starting to feel that desperation in different ways. You know, people who feel like they've lost something in their neighborhood, all the things that we worry about versus looking forward to. To that end, I want to recommend Abundance for everybody. So as a book to read. So anyway, I just picked up on housing, and from there I've spent the past 10 years getting to know this and making it a subject that I absolutely love. Love working on housing. So the manufactured housing strategy comes to me. When I started this role, I stepped into the role that Crystal Wander worked in. Did any of you work with Crystal? And the first line of business was to really get to know the project at Ponderosa, the Ponderosa stabilization, and I add the word to it, redevelopment project, because that is also a piece of what we're doing with our investment there. And it's pretty amazing to see what the city of Boulder is doing with regard to targeted investment and thinking very, very strategically about how we can advance and preserve a manufactured housing community and how we can transition the housing type and make a big, big difference for a lot of people's lives and begin to think again, forward looking, what will the housing type look like? So I come to this with not a lot of experience around mobile homes and manufactured housing, but I'll unpack with you a little bit of what I've learned from doing a bit of a review and also just getting to know Boulder through this product. Told you I'm chatty. So the council priority itself was raised by council in their, I think it was late March 2024. Yeah, end of March 2024. They had their retreat and they put together, I want to say it's like 13 priorities were identified in that. And the question was raised by two of our council members, including Mayor, that we had a commitment, we had a verbal commitment, we had a written commitment to begin work or take time at some point to go work with the park owners in Boulder, the mobile home parks, and explore the opportunity to partner with them and see if there was a way to advance. Maybe we would design a grant program. Maybe we would go after joint funding and find a way to help strengthen infrastructure and make sure that they had the right utility systems in place and that the basic foundation of these parks would be sold. And if so, might they consider a restriction in raising rents? Might they consider some sort of an in lieu exchange for us to create some more affordability? And so that was kind of the goal that was articulated by council at that time. Our staff, with Kurt's leadership, Kurt Bernhaber, our director, said, we also would need to review what happened with it. Where are we with the manufactured housing strategy? And so I'm going to work on that, and I will be working on it a little bit longer and enjoy sharing it with you. So we're reviewing this action plan accomplishments to date. I will try and rattle through some of those. And we are exploring the potential to work with our private parks and see if they want to partner with us. In the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, you find policy 709, for those of you who've been on planning board or have worked on this area before. And this is where we as a city call out our commitment to support and preserve manufactured housing and mobile home parks. I want to make a distinction at this point that I tend to use the terms a little bit interchangeably. Technically speaking, a mobile home is a home that was manufactured before 1976. And so in the literature, people use the term mobile home primarily to describe that type of home, that existing home today. And that a manufactured home is what you call that same product, a mobile home that's manufactured after 1976 and came into use then. I think, and I've got more learning to do in this, I think it has something to do with HUD regs. Because in my previous work at the city of Westminster, I was not allowed to use any federal funding on any homes that were built pre-1976. I think there was a standard put in place about the type of product it is, the way that the house was constructed, that points at that. But we use you hear manufactured housing park, mobile home park, mobile home, manufactured home. It's kind of fuzzy out there in the world, but there is that little interesting distinction about the product.
We also call it a trailer park.
Also call them
A trailer park.
a trailer park, because historically, that was also a term that described the product. Yeah. The mobile home communities in Boulder, as looked at in 2019, have this makeup. And this is kind of the introduction to some of the considerations and concerns globally of what it is as a housing product in our communities. As you can see, the top line there's pre-1976, the distinction I was just talking you through, which is a greater than 50 years old, for those of us who are greater than 50 years old. At least 37% of the homes in our mobile home communities are of that age. And then the next one down, made between 76 and 95, you got another 29%. So we've got 2/3 of the housing stock in the manufactured housing communities in Boulder is really old. And then you have some of the newer ones, but it's less than 30%. So that's the makeup. I wanted to take us back in history a little bit, because this has also been a really fun part of getting to know these communities and getting to know the housing type. So the mobile home parks in Boulder that we see in the land use as the city's growing and as it's settling have been around since at least 1950. Before that, they were motor parks and trailer parks, and there was evidence in one of the files that said that there was a veterans camp. So basically, there was a set-aside park or just land that was allowed, and people who were veterans were allowed to pull in and stay there. I don't think that they were set up for really long-term living at that age. So one of the questions I have going forward is a little bit about, when did motor parks become mobile home parks? And were people long-time residents? Would people come for jobs then and really stay? You know, there's some information about the origins that I do not know. So in 54, I read in the Paddock files that Mapleton Mobile Home Park was built. Is that correct? In 1958, the aerial photography on the far right corner, we see the first little remnants of Ponderosa showing up out there. View of the homes parked around a small building. And then 60, we see Orchard Grove, the bottom corner on the left. So for note, I would offer that mobile home communities of Boulder are older than many of the neighborhoods of Boulder. These folks have been here, and this land use, this housing community type was here before our neighborhoods were here. In 1970, Boulder Mobile Village, now Boulder Meadows, opens up. They had a grand opening on May 17th. They had colorful balloons and all the things you can imagine in the 1970s being put out to draw people in. The factoid that comes to me in this piece of the reading is that in the 1970s, 1 in 4 homes in the United States was a manufactured home. They were being made so fast. The factories were up and running, and the need for people to figure out where they were going to go to work and how they were going to be able to support themselves was pretty forefront. What happens also, says the person who facilitated a YIMBY conference, is we see the first time where city planners, city developers, and people living in neighborhoods reject the ability for parks to come into the cities. And so what you do, the pattern begins that you see these parks being constructed and set up on the edges in the urban zones outside of the actually incorporated cities. And then we get to the 80s, at which time City of Boulder, and I was not here, but, beginning, if you think about City of Boulder from our other history lessons we learned, some of my early lessons came from serving on the Plan Boulder Board and being a part of obviously every neighborhood group I ever talked to. We were pretty progressive, we still are, but we were pretty progressive about the fact that these are neighbors, and these are homes. And we want to make sure that they're safe, secure, and offering our residents what they need. So we begin to see a lot of activity with regard to rules and legislation to support manufactured housing as a housing type. It becomes a land use in Boulder. It's listed in the comp plan, which you also saw the other language earlier. In 2013, there was a flood. Anybody not here in 2013? Were you all here for 2013? Okay, this is what the northern road into Ponderosa looked like. That's 4 Mile Creek right over there on the right. And it was, as you imagine, pretty impactful on all of our manufactured housing. Sans Souci down in South Boulder Creek was an island trying to bail themselves out. And that also inspired some additional change and investments here. So in 2014, at the end of this flood, when the water recedes and the mud dries a bit, the owner came to the City of Boulder in search of some funding because the sewer system and all of the underground infrastructure was destroyed from this. In 2017, the city purchases Ponderosa from the family who owned the property at that time. And in part, we were doing that. I can't speak to the vision of my colleagues at that time, but again, it was a very important piece of housing that we wanted to preserve, obviously, from that instinct to do that. But it also was facilitated by the fact that when you have a natural disaster like this, the opportunity for federal dollars is intensified. So the land that actually purchased Ponderosa is known as the CDBG-DR, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief Funding. And that was the money used to actually purchase the property. In 2018, no piece of just guidance coming into our planning documentation. We have an ordinance that defines non-conforming uses, and that's also used to help us strengthen the supports and what we can do to help our mobile home parks, because at this point, they're pretty much a non-conforming use. And then, as I will talk to in a little bit, we get into a lot of state legislation activity. Boulder enjoys, or Colorado rather, enjoys the fact that, again, pretty progressive leadership, pretty interested in looking at quality of life issues and housing needs. And so our state legislature and our communities have been pretty robust in pushing legislation. So when the strategy was begun by Crystal, was Crystal the prime staff on it, or was pretty much a staff team, or?
Crystal.
Yeah, she used what were set up as her guiding principles, or the guiding principles for the product. And what she has put into it is these 4 areas of interest. These are the whys, if you will. So we want the actions, the tasks, and the strategy to be accountable. We want to see accountability into it. And the language used was that the agreements and ordinances requirements would have clearly defined practical enforcement mechanisms that were accessible to all affected parties, and especially the residents of our manufactured housing communities. She wanted it to also speak to affordability and protect affordability. So manufactured housing will continue to serve as an affordable market rate ownership opportunity. Programs and policies will be pursued to stabilize rent increases, reduce costs for home repairs, reduce home replacement costs, reduce energy and water costs, and consumption by households in manufactured housing communities. The third was community. Strengthening community and manufactured housing continues to meet the needs of diverse populations, especially vulnerable community members, programs and resources employed to support the needs of our residents. And finally, viability. that the existing and any new manufacturing homes and the communities in which they're located will be safe, well-maintained and modernized, especially as the homes become more energy efficient. Both for-profit and nonprofit communities will be able to perform well enough to cover current and capital expenses and provide a reasonable return on investment. So again, she's tipping the hat to private investment, private owned communities, and then some not-for-profits. The ownership of our parks in Boulder and around the edges of Boulder are a little bit mixed up in that we have two parks, not mixed up, but there's some differences. We have two parks that are not privately held for-profit developers. So we have the Mableton Mobile Home Community, which was also a property that benefited from the flood. A lot of infrastructure was replaced and a lot of grant money brought in to bear there. It's also because of its proximity to, I want to say is that Goose or Elmer's? Goose. It's Goose, yeah. Because of Goose, they also had flood impacts and did some flood mitigation work for the long-term safety of the community. And then, of course, Ponderosa had a flood access. And so Ponderosa is owned by the city. Mapleton is actually held by Thistle Community Housing. And has been explored for the use of becoming a resident-owned community, allowing the folks to own their own property. Sans Souci, the property south of town on the county level, is the only rock in this part of Colorado. And Rock is a resident-owned community. It's a program that was started. This thing really doesn't want me to use this.
Can I just say that fence right there is Mapleton, our northern border, and one of our residents, artists painted that with an art grant from the city of Boulder. And with that money, he was able to go from renting a room in a mobile home park, in the mobile home, to actually buying the mobile home.
Very cool. Isn't that fabulous? I love that. Yeah, so anyway, we have a couple that are private or a couple that are publicly owned. Rock is a program that was started. I want to say that the fund was originally set up in the 1990s, but I might be wrong. It was started in Indiana. It's a family foundation. There was a gentleman who was really interested in empowering people who lived in mobile home communities to buy the land and become self-directed entities.
And the one you're talking about is that's off the frontage road on South Boulder Road as you leave town on the east side.
West side.
It's on the west, so it's further down towards
Yeah, it's down it's right on South Boulder Creek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and on the east side is a little teeny park called Table Mesa. It's named after the neighborhood for some reason. This reminds me that one of the things I also wanted to talk about in regard to timeline and the strategy and where we are. The prioritization of the needs for infrastructure primarily come at the city because of some of our nearby neighbors in the county mobile home communities. You have, when you drive around the city and you look at them, and if you don't know your city boundaries, how would you know what's in and out of the city, right? So on the end of Valmont, all the way out just past the post office, is a park called San Lazaro. I always want to say the accent the A's differently. And that community is in the county. It's not part of the city of Boulder. It's right on the edge. There's another place, little teeny tiny park called Columbine, and that is on Arapahoe, right off of 60th, 63rd area. That is in the county. It is not part of the city. So we have this issue. We have always had this issue as long as I've worked here with county enclaves, little bits and pieces of property inside what feels like our jurisdiction, but that have not been annexed in, and they still exist as county resource.
Is there a map anywhere in your slides that shows the city and the county and sort of puts dots about where mobile home parks are? Because I just think that would be
Karen,
interesting.
I should have brought prizes.
You're open, you want these suggestions.
I
right?
certainly
Okay.
do.
I think a map would be, would be
Thank you very much.
the good visual.
I should have brought prizes. I probably have some in my car.
That's okay, no worries.
Do you want an antique vase? I've got a box of antiques that need to go away.
It's
I
all
think
good.
another thing you could add is when we had our racial equity training, I put up a map of Boulder based on census data. And they had, it was like all the Hispanic communities were yellow and it kind of aligns with all the mobile home parks. And I think it impresses upon people, you know, who is living in these communities. And I think that's important,
Okay.
you know, for people to understand.
Map coming up.
Yeah,
Thank you both so much. You know, I didn't get your first name.
Chip,
Chip. Nice to see you. Okay, so that is the why. I want to move us over now to the how. And so one of the things that I did when I started going through the action items listed in the plan that was adopted in was first adopted in 2019, and then it was updated during the pandemic, you know, getting a little bit more information given where we were and how hard it was to survey, but some footwork put into it. In 2022 in March, the council again took a look at everything and the final action plan was adopted. I wanted to walk us through it from the standpoint of the legislation. As I mentioned, in the 1980s and 90s, legislation took off, and then more recently in the 20s. Resident support, one of the things that we read front and center is that the city cares about the residents, the people who make mobile home communities their home. Human rights and code enforcement support, a little bit about the staffing that goes into community needs. And then collaboration with the property owners. And that points at our desire to see who would want to maybe partner with the city on future investments. We help them if they would like to help us think about affordability long-term and preserving it at different levels. So starting with legislation, I did a quick search of everything passed since 2019, starting from the implementation of this strategy, and came up with 8 or 9 or 10 pieces of legislation. I don't want to spend a lot of time, I don't want to read it too, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that is really impactful. Obviously, we have in 2019 a dispute resolution and enforcement program. And so what this does is require that landlords, we're starting to see a push toward landlords to focus a little bit more differently on their role with property management and health and safety, and just the condition for communication and information for the residents. Then the big one that I remember cheering for was 2012-01, when that was the law that requires that the if a landlord is going to, if a property owner rather is going to sell a mobile home park, they create sort of a first right of refusal for the people who live there. And there's a set of instructions that requires that they publicize that the park is for sale. And they allow a certain amount of time for the residents to find out if they can create a co-op, organize and get a loan, do whatever structuring and organization they would like to actually purchase the park. And we have, I want to say we have maybe 7 rocks in Colorado. I might be a little bit off. Cynthia, do you know the answer to that one?
I don't know.
Yeah, so we have quite a few here. Some of them are doing well, some of them are not doing as well. It's a challenging thing to do. You're taking a group of people who are neighbors and have varying levels of commitment in sort of their neighborhood, different levels of income and life skills to work with. And you're asking them to go out and take out a $6 million loan together. And so it takes a lot of organizing and thinking. There's a gentleman who works for the county. His name is Andy Cadleck. And Andy was the head of ROC for us for some time in Boulder. And his stories are amazing. And his ability to help people coalesce and learn what they need to learn and get their financing together is pretty amazing as well. Other instructions coming out of the legislation are things like oftentimes communication. you're really strengthening what is required from the property owner to inform the residents. And recently we ended up with a requirement that everything be in a person's language. And if it's not Spanish, they can request it. You know, if you have a Hmong community, they can make a request to make sure that information is provided in their language. There is various notices for changes to rules and regulations. You must promulgate it for a certain amount of days. I think it's a month. Anytime you're making a rule change. Water quality was critical in terms of, again, we're dealing with a lot of parks that were built on or are on some aging infrastructure. And so making sure that if there's any problem with the water, you provide water. If there's a water shut off, that is taken care of. This specifically, 1257 speaks to the fact that they wanted to make sure that the water is being tested. A lot of the parks that are not on city water inside of the city are on wells, and a lot of those wells are failing. So the state is going out this year and last year, and they've been doing a lot of testing. They have a dashboard up that you can actually go to look at the status of what's coming up in the tests.
And if they find that the water isn't of good enough quality, who's financially obligated to fix it?
The property owner. One of the things we see in the rock world, when people have bought a property, there's a couple of really big examples of this. One was in, I want to say, not Crested Butte, but further south.
Gunnison?
Yeah, maybe down Gunnison. You've got a landlord or property owner rocks the park, says, we're going to sell it. We'll sell it to the residents. Here's the deal. Works with them. You get to the other end, you find out there is no well anymore. There's now a $15 million investment needed in this property. So there's a lot of emergent information with regard to the lawyers who've been involved and the instructions around it. When you are going to sell a property, what is the due diligence and what is required to be disclosed? Yeah, so be mindful of that. So great legislation. We have been very involved in it. Our city's lobbyists and some of the community members from the mobile home communities have been very active in advocating, speaking for, writing letters of support, and participating in some of the legislation that now works on from this standpoint. The thing to remember about this, or to think about, is Colorado has what is known as the Mobile Home Park Act, and it's under Title 38. And it is about property. It's about property rights. So the Mobile Home Act actually emerges from property rights law, and what the person who sets up a mobile home park is allowed to do. So now you're seeing this kind of codification and striation of, yes, you are the property owner and you have all these rights, but you also have these obligations, and you are providing housing, and it's not just a business. It's not just a real estate gig. It is a community. And so it's really nice to see the shape of some of this legislation and what it affords.
I'll just note with this legislation can be helpful, but I think it's only helpful to the extent that the mobile home park owners have a lawyer.
Yeah, they do.
It's very technical. In Boulder they do, but in most places they do not. And there's a handful of law firms in Colorado that specialize in evicting people from mobile home parks. And the disparity between the mobile home park and the people who are being evicted is significant. And these laws are not super user-friendly, and they change every year. And I think it really requires an attorney to get involved in order for the homeowner to see the benefit of those laws.
I think that's a great point, Chip. Thanks so much. I think it'd be really nice. I don't know what other jurisdictions, besides Boulder, have the resources to do a little bit of a workshop training for the property owners as well, just to give them that. I've talked with both our attorneys, the private attorney who now represents our private mobile home parks, present and past, and have heard a lot about the education and the advocacy and the work they try and do to get the law in front of people, their owners, and help them understand it all. It's pretty complex. And it is an ever-changing environment. You know, all of these add on to the mobile home park, more obligations, more responsibilities for the owner.
Yeah, I'm also mindful, a large portion of mobile home park owners, I think especially ones facing eviction, are not fluent in English. So again, you've got all these great laws, technical laws, the General Assembly has written, and many of these people can't even read them.
Thank you. I was thinking you were speaking to the private park owner themselves.
No, I'm referring to the mobile home
Yeah,
owner, so
you're right.
the tenants, they're also tenants, because the defining feature, you spoke earlier of mobile home manufacturer, referring to the actual like structure. But the defining feature of a mobile home park is that the person who lives in the unit either doesn't own the land beneath them, they are tenants. They often do own the unit, and they own that, and it might be their most valuable asset, but they still have to pay rent every single month. And if something happens and they fall behind on rent, they run the risk of losing their home. And as you mentioned, most of these homes are built before 1980. The law contemplates that you can pick up, if you get evicted, you can take your mobile home with you to a new park, except no new park will accept a mobile home built before 1980. And the majority of these homes are for 1980. So it's especially, you lose your home if you can't pay your rent, which isn't too different from a foreclosure if you're a homeowner with a mortgage, except the bank doesn't have all these people living and breathing down your neck and policing what's going on. And foreclosure is a much longer process with opportunities to cure. Whereas, you fall 1 month behind on your rent, you could very well lose your home within 14 days.
Yeah, that is, it is I'm again, still trying to get my head around how this housing type works. I'm just owning it. The fact that everyone who owns a mobile home considers themselves a homeowner and has a certain level of investiture and pride in that, but they're still paying rent and live in land tenancy.
Well, and the law refers to them as owners. It's the term. It's
Yeah.
homeowners. So
Yeah.
that's what's in that.
Yeah. Cynthia.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know what other mobile home parks, consider for rent, but for Mapleton, the rent covers the water. It covers the sewage, it covers, snow removal, it covers, tree care, so no resident has to incur the cost of, removing branches from the tree after a snow. It covers, our laundry room, it covers maintenance of our grounds, it covers our infrastructure, our lighting, our infrastructure, and so, it can cover, but those things, but if you do fall behind, it's, we have, sort of mini loans, in place and everything, but, you can't even, for a home, an older home, you're no longer able to, pull it out. We have, people who are replacing them have to have them demolished in place. On site.
Yep.
Because you can't move them. And if you happen to have a loan or a personal loan or, that, 16-23% interest, if you bought something like that and you get evicted, and if you can't sell it, because then you're stuck with a loan without a home.
No, it's extremely complicated. It's one of the most.
It's a very
complicated
serious
things.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, talking about the law. After the legislation, thinking about all of the things that we have done under the strategy and as a community that cares about this housing type, and, advocating through the state law, which is the main authority over mobile home communities and the mobile home type, we come to resident support. A big portion of the work under the strategy is supporting the residents in the communities. We have, the city facilitates and helps host a group called the Boulder Mobile Home, Coalition of Mobile Home Owners in Boulder. It's called CMOB. And CMOB is a regular meeting body. It's been going on probably since the pandemic. people who live in the communities and have an interest in working with the city and working to learn more about grants and helping their neighbors, social services, education,
taxes.
programs for kids,
Property taxes.
which is also on our website is one of the things that was inspired by CMOB to make sure we publish. Anyway, it's a great organization. It's a great piece of citizen advocacy there. We have also inside of our community engagement department of the city, which houses neighborhood relations, that old neighborhood liaison job, it's under there now. And all of the outreach that we also help steward for residents of Boulder, all types of residents of Boulder. We have grant programs. So we also have a special grant program for community building in the manufactured housing communities. We have a website put up by Edgar Chavarria, who is our current neighborhood liaison for all of the neighborhood, the mobile home and manufactured home residents. And trying to think if there's anything else on there. Oh, we had some emergency responders who were brought in and trained during COVID. And those individuals helped connect their neighbors into resources as well. They serve as neighborhood navigators and they serve as navigators to local government and local social service resources. We have a department in the city that is known as climate now, but I keep hearing it called sustainability. Was it called sustainability at one point in time before it was called climate?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's Jonathan Cohen. It's the group that does a lot of climate action and obviously lends towards sustainable practices and encourages this. And they have stewarded some new grants for the manufactured housing. So we have some grant monies that come out to serve this audience specific to some of the climate action. We had the windstorms, thinking back a few years back, huge windstorms. Disaster monies were brought out to support all sorts of needs around the city from the impacts and the damages. And some of the monies went specifically to help the manufactured housing facilities. We used to have a home repair grant of up to $10,000. I think we're working right now to refund that. So I don't have a status on that right now. We have a furnace replacement. It's not really us, it's through a program called CARES. It's kind of a state grant, but it runs through the counties, and our county and our climate grant staff would help any of our residents apply for that.
I was just gonna say about those programs, if they go in and they see a home and they said, they said the home isn't worth it. It's a 1967 or 1964 or 1969, then this home is not worth the repairs, then they'll deny the repairs. They can also go in, if they're inspecting a home for this kind of a weatherization or a CARES program, or even the wind damage program, they can say, we're going to condemn this property actually. And then, so some people I know in Mapleton are a little hesitant to call for these programs because they're worried that their home is going to be condemned.
And if it's condemned, are they given any compensation for it? Or they just like, you gotta move out?
You gotta move out. And they put a note on the door. They're not, we had one of our residents with a severe disability. Thank God she had Section 8 voucher and she was able to get into another, but they went in and they condemned her. Rather than.
And this is a big fear I have about the government getting more involved with our mobile home parks. In part because the mobile home parks in Boulder are the only free market affordable housing that's left. And there are certain people that cannot or will not go to the government to live in government run housing. Perhaps it's because of their immigration status, perhaps it's because they have a criminal history, or perhaps it's because they have a large family and the government's going to say, oh, if you want to be in an apartment with BHP, you need this number of bedrooms, and that's going to cost you thousands of dollars. And they can say, well, I can live in a mobile home. And I think we, as much as it's not the most perfect system, and I think our government wants to do a lot of good. I think there's certain demographics that wouldn't be able to live in affordable housing that's run by the city of Boulder. And they would be pushed out of our community if our mobile home parks are run by the government. So that's always a concern I have. I see both sides of the coin, improving conditions for people, but then also pushing people out at the same time.
I am so coming back to this group. Because I've got so much to learn. This is so fabulous. Yeah, I feel the same way on much of this, Chip. I'm in the process right now, working with my colleagues to apply for some of the Prop 123 money, Proposition 123. We all voted for it in 2022. Is it 23?
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a pretty hefty affordable housing trust fund that's being built by the state from a voter-led proposition a couple years back. And they have a fund underneath it that is for replacement housing. It's for rehabilitation, but inside of the legislation, the actual handwritten, here's what they said they wanted to do. It says it can be used to replace mobile homes. And so we put in an application to see if we can get it to help out. And if you wrote me a letter of support for it. Yeah, and so, but every time I look at how do you do it? You know, you get a grant and you start working with the communities to say, here's, I'm gonna be able to help the person with the 1965 home. And here's how. You do risk, if we got in there and somebody did the inspection and said, oh, this house is not replaceable, and they didn't qualify for the money, I've just made somebody homeless. You know, it speaks to exactly what you're saying.
We've been talking about that home replacement and that opportunity, because we have people whose homes would be condemned. And so, you know, you can't you want to do a good thing to help your neighbors, especially on the board of the Mapleton Mobile Home Park, but you also don't want the displacement, you know, because we have folks who don't have other family members. We have folks who wouldn't qualify for assisted living. We have folks who, we have the very, very low income and very, people who are very challenged in finding places to live. And it is difficult, you know, how do we, you know, get a loan to purchase a home to replace it for a person, for a senior, you know, who's 86 years old? Do we do a reverse mortgage? I mean, like it just gets, and then we go back thinking, you know, how could we ever become a rock community? You know, we're barely, you know, able to manage, you know, some of our senior situations, you know, as a community. You know, we definitely need partnerships and everything and people to help us, you know, with these loans and trying to think through these problems, because
But what both of you have illustrated in your commentary is that we've got neighborhoods that are of profound vulnerability. Really old people. I mean, I say they're all really old, but I mean, you've got an aging population who've been there for years. I also, as you know, run Ponderosa Mobile Home Park. I have residents I had one die in December. He grew up there, lived his whole life in that park.
Yeah, we have neighbors who, you know, pass away in their homes. We just lost one a few weeks ago. And, you know, then we end up with, okay, well, it's owner occupied. And so now a family has it who wouldn't income asset qualify for that particular home. So they're gonna have to sell it, but you can't sell, like, how do you sell in 1972, you know, for anything? It's
challenging. It is very complex.
I also frequently see a lot of people who own a mobile home don't actually have the title. They're not the registered owner with the DMV. And then when they sort of get in the legal system, they're like, oh, we want to see title. What's your social security number? And it was a cash transaction. They've been living there for 5 years. And I feel like this is a way of life for a lot of people. And this is the only way they can afford to live in Boulder, is in these communities. And then rich white people come in and start imposing different legal standards and all that stuff. And it just doesn't mesh with the practical reality, I think, for a lot of the people who live there. That's sort of been my observation.
It's an interesting area of study, but it's also, again, extremely vulnerable part of our community, and this problem has been compounding since the 70s and 80s, and the resources to deal with it are going to be significant. The third issue that I identified as sort of a looking holistically at our action plan is staff support from human rights and code enforcement. Not to call them out as the only people who are working on this. Everybody at the city and all of our departments are contributing. But recently, I'll tell you a little bit about the story of Orchard Grove. We've had a lot of staff hours going into support in the parks. But basically, we have our mediation and do landlord tenant. And so we have people who go right out and spend time with people who are being threatened with eviction. So we have resources that help in that regard. People don't know, as you point out, Chip, they don't know to call the city of Boulder for these services. More frequently, we get connected up by EFA or Catholic Charities or one of the school groups that understands what resources may help a family. We also, when you want to sell a mobile home, we'd have to go through an inspection process. So part of that is performed by our code enforcement inspectors. And then my last bullet here, in 2023, it was discovered that a number of the homes in Orchard Grove were failing and non-compliant, and the term of art is red tagged, meaning that they were being condemned in the standard language. And when our staff responded to this, they started interviewing all of the families. You know, that's quite a number of people to have become homeless pretty quickly in Boulder, right? And the interview process uncovered that people were told by a person who worked for the company that they could make repairs or remodel their homes so long, and without a permit, so long as they did it on evenings and weekends, you know, just kind of telling the story from their standpoint of why their home was now completely ready to be demolished. And so our staff has been hand in hand with that group of people and pulling together resources across all of the grant programs to support people. I think out of, I want to say 34 homes that had this, they were able to get repair grants and bring all but 8 back into compliance. And the other families are kind of doubled up, and with other people right now, we're trying to solve for the final 8. But when we do have an issue in the park, the city provides resources from all spectra to come in and provide the support we can to help the families and make sure things are cared for, to preserve what we can and to make sure people are stable.
So I have a question. The cost to build a new affordable housing apartment can be somewhere around $500,000 a door.
Correct.
What is the cost to buy a used manufactured home that and a new manufactured home? So like if some of these units are like can't really be repaired and we wanted to make an effort to replace the one that's being condemned with something else, what's basically the cost of a used or a new home that would be in compliant?
My experience here again is still shallow, but there aren't a lot of good used ones around.
Okay.
But they're, when you can find them, they run from about 120 to 250.
Okay.
But we actually have, with this grant, this Prop 123, Crystal did some preliminary research and spoke with a couple of the mobile home manufacturers in the area. And we have a quote that if we get the grant, we're going to be able to buy all electric, high energy efficiency, gold standard, and as much as gold standard will still be around, homes for and have them installed and put in for about 120,000.
Wow.
And that's a
Those are new?
It's brand new.
Wow.
And what are the costs that we're building on
The
Arapahoe?
new,
More than twice that.
Wow.
really?
My mobile home through the flood recovery came in about 42,000, and I have a 700 square foot two bedroom. But it had, you know, gas stove, that kind of thing. It's not ultra efficient and everything, but it was a $42,000 home. It was about 15,000 to pull it out and install it together. It was about 15,000 to do that.
What year was that, Cindy?
That was 2018.
And why do you think the ones you're buying are so much less than the ones we're building?
Well, I have theories. I don't have any true answers. We're just getting started. And so our on-ramp costs are a little higher right now than they probably will be in the future. So
Are the units they're building at Ponderosa, are those actually like mobile homes or are they just manufactured housing?
we,
No, they're fixed foundation. They're they're modular. So there's no difference between modular and a stick built. Other than it's built in the factory.
Right.
So,
So that's not, Ponderosa is no longer a mobile home park.
yes, it is. Mobile Home Park Act, 1980. It's until you have less than 5 homes on a parcel that was established as a mobile home park, you are a mobile home park.
But how do you, if you're evicting someone, how do they take their house with them? Because that's what the Mobile Home Park Act contemplates. If you get evicted, you can take your house with you.
Their point is just, it'll remain a mobile home park until more than, or 95% of the homes are replaced with fixed foundation.
Right.
Okay, so we're phasing it from, it's no longer going to be mobile home park.
Correct, over time.
It'll be an HOA where they'll actually own the land. So instead of owning a depreciating asset, they're actually gonna own an appreciating asset. And I'd say the other big difference between a manufactured home is that it's still on a chassis, right? So you can insulate it all you want, but it's still not gonna be anywhere near as energy efficient as a modular home.
I think if we take that approach with all our mobile home parks, there's gonna be a large segment of the community that'll be pushed out of Boulder.
Yeah, so just to be clear, that's not the intent, you know? Yeah,
Yeah, I know that's not the intent.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Ponderosa was a unique situation. It
Was
could be a
that-
model for other communities, but it's not something the city is pushing.
Was that unique because of the damage done by the flood? Like there kind of wasn't a choice, so to speak? Like if the comp plan is to preserve and protect. But
Yeah,
that's kind of going a new direction. Is it because of
It is
2013?
contrary to the existing policy, right, preserving existing manufactured housing communities. So yeah, there was a special, I mean, it was a decision that was made by council to allow the conversion. Because that's what's unique about our policies and code is that you can't redevelop mobile home parks in Boulder. Most other communities, that's the biggest threat, is that an owner could sell it, right, and redevelop it into super high-end housing. But as part of that decision, the concession that was made was, a commitment to no displacement, right? So anybody who lives in Ponderosa will be allowed to purchase one, and the city will help subsidize that through a second mortgage program. So regardless of what your income is, you'll be eligible to purchase a home in Ponderosa.
But they still did lose a lot of people.
They did,
They
yes.
There was a mobile home park on the north side of Valmont from the Mapleton Mobile Home Park, and it was a largely Hmong Laotian community. And right now, there is an affordable housing, Boulder Housing Partner.
Red Oak Park.
Yeah, and they lost that Laotian Hmong community. It,
I think it just took so long to develop that they couldn't, like, where would those people live before they could qualify?
I mean,
that was a significant displacement.
I see there's two elements to it. There's the economic reality, like mobile home park rent is what, like $1,200 a month,
I paid $390.
$390? Okay, that's pretty good. I've seen it up to about $1,200.
Okay, I've got a slide for you
Yeah.
here.
But that's just the land.
That's the rent.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's the rent.
that's the
Well,
rent.
Mapleton's different because we're a land trust.
Yeah, they're in a list.
Well, and I'm also looking, it says lot rent, but I don't know if that includes utilities and.
It depends on the park.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's different by the different parks. Ponderosa, and we just heard from Cindy that also includes the water. So we pay the water at Ponderosa.
For
Boulder Medical.
Mapleton, that's not quite accurate.
Yeah, I was gonna call her and make sure that that number's right.
Call who?
or the woman who,
Marguerite?
Marguerite, yeah.
Marguerite, well, it depends. The market rate is going for like 540, 550 a month.
Okay.
And then the lowest income is 390.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get that number fixed. I was thinking about that today when I realized I was gonna see you. So the lot rents vary across the different parks. You can tell all of those that are in the 900 range are private owners. And they also have, of course, a different kind of a community amenity. I gotta check on the utilities. I'm not sure on where they all stand. So the last charge, the priority from city council. What about your idea in the task list to go out and see if you can partner with the private owners to see if we could find a way towards getting some reduced or limitations on rent increases? So myself, Kurt, and the deputy director of utilities has met with all three of the owners of Boulder Meadows, Orchard Grove, and Vista Village, and the answer was no. The answer was thank you, but no thank you. Our infrastructure is working. We've invested in our distribution system. Our water tests are fine. And we just don't need this right now. The language included things like, we don't believe in rent restrictions. We don't want you to come in and tell us what our rents have to be. What we did hear, an interesting tidbit from one was, if you wanted to put together your own subsidy program, we'd be happy to work with you and with our clients in need. They did, outside of saying they wanted to be a participant in any type of investment in their infrastructure, they did offer to share more information about the status of their infrastructure currently. And they also told stories about all the things that they're trying to do in their community and the fact that they do accept vouchers for rent. And when people get in trouble, they work with them and or they accept any of the subsidies that may come from the not-for-profit or local church communities to help people. That was all they offered us today, but we'll stay in touch. We've got a new set of friends out there in the property owner world. It's always nice for them to meet new staff across town.
Yeah, I mean, the picture I'd like to paint, 1,000 lot rent, if it's a pre-1980 mobile home, a family of 7 can come in and buy that for pretty cheap because it's falling apart. And if the government was there, they'd condemn it. So they get this, and then they can house 7 people for $1,000 a month plus whatever the small amount they paid for this house. And I feel like if Boulder Housing Partners came in, they'd be like, this doesn't comply with Boulder's human rights standards or something. That Boulder Housing Partners just has higher standards than the mobile home parks. And that's a good thing in a certain respect. But if we impose those standards on the parks, it'll push out a lot of people from our community as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the balancing act. And that's something I try to, it's a hard thing to grapple with. But I think when we make policy that's intended to improve quality of life for people, we also need to be mindful of the practical reality of improving, an improved quality of life tends to be more expensive and a barrier to entry. And I'll just stress there's some people who just don't want to live in government run housing for personal reasons, but there's also people because of their immigration status. That's I think very common. And I think that's something that we as a community need to be mindful of is, that's an important part of our community.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that as well. Thanks for sharing it. It is a pride in home ownership at a certain space, and it is your own 4 walls. You're not attached to other people and other interests. So I hear people that's one of the reasons that they've made that lifestyle choice. There's so many different reasons for, people who I've talked to why they're living in manufactured housing. And it's wonderful that option is existing and it is where it is today. And I will not go out and buy out a bunch of mobile home parks and make them into public housing.
Nor will Boulder Housing Partners.
Nor will, yeah.
They learned a very painful lesson at Red Oak Park.
Yeah. Which was
So-
the place
That was
On
where
Belmont.
they displaced a significant population,
We were just talking about.
despite having good intentions. As Karen said, it took too long. it was unrealistic to expect that people would move somewhere else and then move back. So,
On a personal level, like, I think what makes Boulder such a cool place to live is like, we are a rich city where the median home price is like $1.5 million. But at the same time, we have these communities where immigrants can live, where, you know, we have some diversity, and I think the mobile home parks play a huge part in that. And I'm afraid that if we get rid of our mobile home parks, the demographic of our community, that'll go away. you know?
Can I piggyback on that? One thing you might contemplate for your presentation to city council is just a slide or two about the value, the vibrancy, the wonderfulness of the mobile homes and why the community cares about them. You kind of, not to criticize too much, but you kind of started off by describing it as a certain kind of product in a certain kind of category, and it went kind of straight into like you know, the nitty gritty. And so like maybe just a couple of slides that show some pictures of the community and get a sense of who lives there and why we value these neighborhoods would be a nice improvement for the presentation.
Thanks, Philip. It's fabulous input. Yeah, no, I agree. I have been thinking about the housing type, but what is most important when we're speaking about using the term community in any context, right, is who is that community? Who's
You
there?
could share the story that Cynthia shared about the person who painted the murals and.
You know, one thing you didn't mention, my memory on this is gonna be a little hazy because it's an older project, but Red Oak Park off of Belmont. I believe that was a.
We were just talking
We were
about,
just talking
we
about
just
that.
just talked about over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
the same one, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Jay just brought it up.
Because they had one thing I remember about that, and correct me, is they had a very high, I think the term is recapture rate of people who moved out while the homes were rebuilt. And were able to move back in, they actually tracked them.
They had a high rate?
I thought we just said that was a
No, they
disaster.
had a
Low
very
rate.
low rate.
they tried very hard to get as many people to come back,
Right.
but a lot of people did not.
Did not.
I don't know what the percentage is, but I've never heard anyone describe it as high.
Do we know why? Was it a time, like I know Ponderosa's challenge or potential challenge is the timing. Was that the same for Red Oak or?
Well, Ponderosa is different because in Ponderosa, we haven't displaced anyone. So we're building new houses and giving them the option to move into the new homes, and then that makes spaces for the modular homes. Red Oak Park, they had to reconstruct the entire park, so everybody had to move out. And even though BHP found places for everybody to move to, a lot of times in BHP projects. So a lot of it was people were perfectly happy in their new community. They'd already established themselves. It took, 2 or maybe 3 years to build. So it's hard to say why some people didn't return and why. So maybe they were perfectly happy where they were, maybe they weren't. It's hard to say.
In my conversation with the owners of Boulder Meadows, there's a Hmong community in there. Is that probably where people went? Or would just random another Hmong community?
One thing I would add in there, I think would be huge for the mobile home park community is just Spanish language access.
Uh-huh.
One of my biggest regrets in life is that I studied French in high school. But I'm always so happy and content when I see, and I get it, but when there's city employees, government employees who are bilingual, I think that's a huge asset, or just an accessible interpretation services. Because that's a lot of, I think a big part of the disparities that I see in mobile home parks is it's awesome, if there's all these resources, but if you don't speak or understand English, a lot of the time that's not helpful. So
Thank you. Yeah, it is a constant focus of trying to make sure that we have the right language access.
I was just gonna say, I've interviewed people at different mobile home parks and have photos and everything. So if you're in need of something like that, and their stories and photos.
That would be fabulous if we put together. This, I will buy you coffee. I'll come make copies and grab whatever I can. Real coffee or mushroom coffee, real coffee, whatever you want. Yeah.
So Molly, other than getting feedback like you're getting from the board here, what would you ask of have based on this presentation?
Can I just, I'm gonna
Oh,
go through
okay.
this real quick and then I'm at the very end here.
So,
So what I want to stress about the strategy is we're not done. It is still in place and we've gotten out of 35 action items identified, we're past 30. And the last 4 include things like, can we make a deal with the private property owners? You know, or could we find some more land and build another park? You know, some things that are a little bit out of reach at this point, especially when what we've just discussed is contemplating how many resources we need to preserve right now, right? So we're going to continue elevating our homeowners' voice. We're going to continue supporting all of the groups and advocates in that arena. We are doing the best we can to preserve housing with whatever grants we can. Excel just came out with a cooling grant. So Excel's about to have money for air conditioning for specifically tied to mobile home parks. I haven't got the details on that one yet. I'm also working to get rehab money from the same Prop 123 funding. So continuing to have things that city employees do well, and that's go out and sleuth money. Private landlord tenant eviction prevention resources. We're on the streets every day. And as I said, I've got 3 new friends in the industry. I'm going to spend as much time as I can staying in touch with the private property owners in Boulder as we do this work. What would I ask of HAB? You guys have already provided me, some really good input. Thank you for the question about a map. Thank you for identifying the communities or people. Tell some stories about the people and bring that in. Breaking out a little bit about the how the mobile home owner versus the landowner, that we have mobile home owners who have rights to their house, but they're tenants. And make sure I've told that story a little bit, listing out all the strategies. I was thinking as I was talking that perhaps showing you or handing you kind of the spreadsheet of all of the various action items might be helpful. Does that seem like that would be very good to have?
Because I kind of feel like you've done this great presentation and then it's like, okay, what are next steps? Yeah, I mean, that's very big picture, general, but the goals, what success.
Yeah, I was actually working on this last slide with Kurt yesterday and he said, just say continuing the work. But yes, we will put in some next steps on that one.
I'm intrigued by your comment about finding more land and building more parks.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have the planning reserve to consider. I'm curious that we had this flurry of construction in this area in the 70s. It's still going on? What's the trend?
The
2 questions.
whether or not we would be able to find more land in the planning reserve has not been explored.
Okay, is it worth
Can
exploring?
we?
I have to.
I mean,
So
with
the
the,
question, what do we want to
the
use the
cost-
planning reserve for?
but
as
the
a-
cost difference between 500 to 700,000 for an affordable unit versus 125,000 for a
Not
mobile
including
home.
the infrastructure and the costs and the property management over. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
understand,
we got some development.
double it,
Yeah.
250.
Yeah.
That's half the price.
Yeah.
Even if we looked at what Boulder Mod is creating and added some to that, it's still potentially less than.
But you have to
Enough where you
remember,
with it.
that you have to remember when you, that's $700,000 a door, $500,000 a door it's denser, so you can fit more units on the same acre of land or
True.
whatever. But I know there's some people who don't want to live in an apartment complex, like they want to, so.
And if we're talking about looking at housing variety, it just seems like that there should be real effort at
There would be
looking to
a-
see if it's a possibility to have another.
These
park.
mobile home parks are also, they are still, I mean, it's not an apartment building because there's not 5 floors, but they're still very dense. Like, it's much denser than, residential neighborhood.
Single family neighborhood.
Right, much more.
Well, I know we can't answer that question in this room, but seems like that's something that deserves consideration going back to this.
So yeah,
Idea.
there are 4 action
You
items.
could have a lot of housing types in planning reserve area 3.
Yeah.
Could that be one of the housing types?
Yeah,
So just to be clear, there will be a whole area, planning process for the planning reserve, and it will come up. It's not something I think you want to say, we should have a mobile home park.
No, I understand.
It's one of the things that should be considered along with other housing types.
Just haven't heard it mentioned before until she brought it up. I thought, wow.
I was
Opportunity.
just
Michael?
gonna say, the modular homes and this idea of building wealth. Is a significant. Asset to the community. Just that, you know, we have a lot of younger people moving into our mobile home park. And I know. So you're looking at people with significant challenges, but also this real need to help people who are the most vulnerable in the community build wealth. Because that's a huge benefit and it's something that we just don't have.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea of trying to like, you know, like how do you combine those?
Well, and I think it's important to understand like I don't know what the statistics are, but like a lot of mobile home park residents own their mobile home and then they rent the land underneath. There's also many mobile home park residents that are just pure tenants. The park owns the mobile home and the land, and they're just a tenant leasing the unit. And perhaps one thing, you know, if the city of Boulder wants to get in the mobile home park business, you know, $120,000 mobile home, there's a lot of people out there, even with a mortgage or something, who just, they're not gonna be able, they don't have the credit, whatever. But if there was maybe a rent to own sort of structure where you start off as a tenant, and if you've been there for a few years, there's some model, and eventually a lot of these, you know, if we were to build a new mobile home park on the planning reserve, it could start off as all rented units. Over time, people, if they've been there long enough and they have the money, they can transition to ownership. That's also something to look at, which is not something that we typically do with like apartment buildings. So I think the way that mobile home parks are zoned sort of offer that flexibility, and that people can be tenants, low-income tenants. They can also be low-income owners of an asset as well.
It's gonna have to be something brand new.
There may be another, you know, hybrid model or something else that we will start uncovering as we continue working with Boulder Mod and also the conversion work at Ponderosa and trying to figure out how to preserve housing in the parks. There's a lot of, again, just factoids and stuff from the national scene. There are people in the national arena who are looking at changing the law around chassis. Right now, the mobile home industry, the manufactured housing industry requires that their product be erected on a chassis, which is so, as we've discussed here, not pragmatic. You're not picking up that thing and rolling it anywhere. And so that seems to also be a kernel of what can we unlock with potential to do the housing differently if it was put on a foundation in a different way. Philip,
I want to change the subject slightly from what's currently being discussed, so.
Is it still with affordable, is it still with?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a
Okay.
comment.
I was also gonna say, I've been hitting here, sitting here chatting at you for an hour and 15. You have a pretty big agenda, so I'm happy to wrap up also and come back or.
Then I have a question after
Well, I
Philip.
have something, I have a
We
comment.
probably should wrap it, but we got a lot of great information out of this. And I think
Thank you.
Got some great feedback. Maybe any last questions or
I do,
comments?
I actually have two comments. One is, I'm extremely concerned about the lead that's being sprayed over Vista Village from the airport. There's a lot of studies that have been done that show that neighborhoods like that one are extremely vulnerable to permanent damage from lead toxic poisoning. There's very fine particulate coming out of those particulates of lead coming out of those planes and in high doses. And if that's not on your radar of things to be concerned about, I would like it to be. I think that community really deserves to be educated about it and be told the truth about what's going on with the amount of lead that's being sprayed over their kids. Second thing is, when you reviewed your list of things you were taking from this meeting, I didn't hear something that kind of echoed the speech that Chip gave 2 or 3 times about the tension between increased improving in legal safety and the kind of vulnerability of retaining the residents and the possibility of condemnation. I really thought his points were quite eloquent and deserve to be noted or somehow incorporated into this discussion.
Noted. Thank you.
I have a question. So I understand the structure of a ground lease and you either own or rent your unit, but how is that different than like the community land trusts that Thistle and other affordable housing advocates will use to reduce the home ownership because they don't own the land? And so you don't necessarily have to answer that question, but is this are mobile home parks in essence like a community land trust structure? Like, what's the difference between a ground lease versus that?
I would get more information to be
Okay.
correct in this one, but for the most part, those which are resident-owned communities, when they establish what they are operating from, they set the terms of their land ownership. It's shared across the investors at the, who are paying the
Yeah.
loan on forming the cooperative or whatever their organizational structure is. Oftentimes, they are community land trusts.
Okay.
Elevations Community Land Trust, subset of the Urban Land Conservancy. I was about to say ULI. They are also out right now working with both Rock communities and doing some purchasing on their own to set up some of the mobile home parks in the Southwest as land trust.
My understanding is the Rock communities, they can still evict their residents like any other mobile home park. You own the community, but you don't own the land, like you're part of this collective ownership if you're one of the owners, but if you stop paying your rent, they can evict you from your lot. You don't own your lot in like fee simple. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't understand how that relates to like the concept of a community land trust, but
So I wouldn't,
More,
I think it's more like.
did I see what the connection you're trying to make with the land trust or the land?
And the co-op can evict anyone who doesn't pay their rent.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
own anything when you're in a co-op, you own
Right.
shares in that corporation.
Right.
yeah.
Mapleton is a community land trust.
Sorry?
Mapleton is a community
It
land
is,
trust in
yeah.
partnership with Thistle.
So typically, yeah, the land trust, a nonprofit owns the land. You're not, in that example, you're paying rent for that land.
Yes.
But typically, the land trust model, right, you own the building, you own the structure, which is an appreciating asset. And you're getting all the benefits of a home ownership and, federal tax benefits. You're not getting the same benefit with a mobile home. It's a depreciating asset. Typically, you're paying interest, anywhere from 15 to 20%, and it's a chattel loan. You're not getting those same tax benefits.
so in theory, could the mobile home park be structured like a community land trust so that it's an appreciating, not a depreciating asset, and that you could get a mortgage on your unit as opposed to a chattel?
I think that's where she's going with the whole, redefining what a chassis is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We've got some discovery ahead. Ponderosa, as Jay pointed out, is an HOA and the HOA owns the land. So all of the members in the HOA are landowners, not the land directly under their home per se, but they own
We take our titles to the motor vehicle department.
Yeah, that's the big difference.
That's where a mobile home is titled.
Yep.
The DMV.
And they're supposed to be depreciating, but in Boulder, they're appreciating. That was an issue. So we still have to pay property taxes even.
Anyway, lots of food for thought,
Yeah.
because to me, those are like really big issues that maybe get part of your, future exploration.
Yeah, I'll be back.
I'll be back.
I have one last thing for you as you're learning more about this world of mobile homes. There was a documentary a few years ago showcased at Housing Colorado, and I think it's called A Decent Home. And it was about the beginnings of rock communities and some successful and some not. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
No, but I will watch it. Yeah, I'm on the board of Thistle, so everything I've learned about rock, I've learned through, hanging out with the rock staff and going to meetings and visiting rock communities. Cool. Yeah. But you guys, thank you so much for this. Jay, thank you.
you.
Tiffany, thank you for having me. Lovely to be with you. Sorry to take a
Oh, yeah,
little
for
hour.
representation. Okay, wow, that was a robust item on our agenda. And the next item C under 5 is chair and vice chair elections. So I believe we start this process, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, by asking for nominations. Should we do chair first? Does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
Okay,
I'd like to nominate Karen for vice chair.
do we have a second to that?
You want to be vice chair?
Be vice chair.
And I second
If
it.
you'll accept me.
Okay. Great, and I will nominate Karen Claiborne for the chair.
Except if
I second that.
nominated.
Okay, I guess we'll vote on one at a time. First vice chair, is everyone good with Corinne Hoskin? All in favor?
Are we doing this right, Jay?
Can we do
Well,
it now?
normally, you ask if there are any other nominations
Oh, I'm sorry.
before voting, but
Or do you want to make a speech? I think you guys should make a speech, actually. I'm retracting my vote until I hear.
I've been here for 4 years. I'm eager to get this.
That's fair.
So, do we have any other nominations? I'm sorry.
I'll just say, I think that Karen, you're very organized and you come prepared. And we don't always agree on things, but I really believe that spirited debate is important in public policy. And I think you would do an excellent job as our board chair. And Corinne, I think you come with a strong voice and I hope that you push back at Karen at times. Because I really think it's important that we disagree with each other and we're comfortable disagreeing, because in the end, I think we'll have a better product and better recommendations for council. So I think you both would do an excellent job. And I think that you would both have my support, but I open that up. And that's just what I'd like to see. is
I agree with you
that
on that.
we entertain debate and that we all listen to each other and we make ourselves clear when we disagree and we take that into consideration.
Thank you, Chip. Again, no rush to judgment. Are there any other nominations for chair or vice chair? Would our candidates like to say a few words in support of your candidacy? Probably start with Karen.
we don't have to do that either. You guys are all ready to vote.
Speech. I thought it sounded good.
I would be
I'll
on,
still give it the opportunity.
well, we're running a little behind in our meeting, so I
Right.
want to be like conscious of time, but
Right.
thank you for the nomination and I'd be delighted.
My dream job as a kid was to be the boss, but I happily be the assistant to the boss.
You're actually backup boss, not assistant.
Backup boss.
Yes.
So there's boss in that
Okay,
title somewhere.
Karen Cleveland is chair, all in favor? Say aye. You can vote for yourself, I believe. The nomination passes 6-0 at the end of this meeting. Karen Cleveland is now the chair of the Boulder Housing Advisory Board. Vice chair.
You'll finish this meeting though, right?
I will finish the meeting. I asked Jay about that. He said, finish the meeting. I'm like, okay. Corinne Hoskin for vice chair, all in favor?
Time out, no.
What?
Can you pronounce your first name, please?
So thanks. It's Karen. There's all kinds of variations. I can't actually pronounce the official way because I don't have a Scandinavian accent.
Thank
The way
God.
I remind people to think about car in the garage. I don't know why that.
All right,
Okay, so Philip
thank you.
Oberon
And I often
told me to
don't.
say car in.
I think I've screwed that up a few
I
times.
often
Sorry.
don't hear it because it's been my whole life, so I often.
I just didn't want it to go like 5 more years of hearing it the wrong way.
I know it's
I'll do
not
my
Karen.
best. I'll do my best to hear it and correct
Okay,
it.
from now I'm going to call you vice chair Hoskin. And
Makes me more official.
okay, I think we didn't complete that vote. All in favor, say aye. That passes unanimously. Vice Chair Hoskin is now vice chair.
Thanks for
Thank you.
doing that for all this.
Let's give an applause to Michael.
I was going to be chair for life, but apparently not.
But you're not off the board. You still have to keep
I'm
serving,
here,
right?
I'm here. Yeah. And thank you for being vice chair. Great job. We can go on to another really great topic. The AB member quarterly update to council, we're probably due for one. Last time we reported out on a lot of research we did on subjects like housing for the homeless. I believe Chip delivered the message to council. It was pretty well received. It was otherwise perhaps a stormy meeting. Might be the best way to proceed on this might be to get someone to volunteer to draft the next.
You wanted to deliver.
Yeah,
right?
I was interested in doing both, if that's possible, because because I have kind of an agenda of emphasizing what we did in March with the panel on sharing housing. I would love to be able to kind of like summarize that. But I'd be happy to also include, like split the time with what we discussed this evening. But maybe that's not worth doing, since she's
gonna go to council in August.
yeah, she's gonna have the floor for.
So my suggestion would be that you prepare what you'd like to say, and it will be included in our, in our June package, so that we can just do whatever edits we need to, but be aware that we have 2 minutes? And you can't say a whole lot, so just.
I know what 2 minutes
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
like.
It's 2 minutes and they cut you off.
Yeah, as I recall, I drafted the first one. Everyone had hands on editing, I believe online. We reviewed it at the next meeting, approved it, and then we got to council. That sounds like the
Then
process.
I would have a first draft in the next couple of weeks, so that people can have a chance to go back and forth with me.
Philip?
And I think we're very agreed on the subject matter, so we don't need to discuss that further tonight.
Well, actually.
The new vice chair makes a difference.
I think it would be great to say something about the panel on shared housing. But for our next thing on the agenda, talking about the subcommittee on housing solutions for homeless, and the subcommittee that we're formed.
Just mention it.
Yeah.
And we included in our statement that's part of tonight's board packet, proposed language to include in the quarterly update. I think it's probably less than a minute, so there's more to add there. But we already.
You can take a look at that and use what you want from it.
Okay. We already have that.
So basically, we'd be signaling to council that we have this subcommittee and we'll be weighing in really based on their work plan and the consultant work they're reviewing. That sounds very reasonable.
So here's something to think about. If you feel like we're eating into your 2 minutes to talk about empty bedrooms, in theory, we could present more than quarterly to council. So somebody could present, you could present next month or whatever, and then one of the people on the subcommittee can present at another meeting. So,
That's true.
yeah.
As I recall, you just signed up for the meeting and did the presentation like any other member of the public. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's the Friday before the Thursday meeting it opens.
I know how to do that.
That's a good point though, Karen.
Yeah.
You could do that.
I prefer that, because 2 minutes is vanishingly
Yeah.
small amount of time.
But I like the idea that it's sort of our collective update from the board. Just like this is everything we're doing, but 2 minutes is fast.
Yeah.
But it's our next topic, like there's a lot more I think we want to offer than a 2-minute blurb or a 1-minute blurb. I think the idea is maybe like for our board, when we have like detailed proposals that goes in writing. And then we pair it with just like an oral summary to be like, hey, read that letter in your 500-page council meeting back in.
So I guess the question is, the HAB recommendation to city council was this gonna be read, or this was gonna be?
No, so
I
the
thought this was
proposed
gonna
language
be-
we had for the quarterly update was on the last page of the
Yeah.
proposal.
It's
There's
like a paragraph.
there's 3 sentences or so, I think.
Just to clarify for our newest member, this is not a recommendation to council. It's a way of saying to council, hey, we've been doing work and we're paying attention to your issues. We've done a lot of research and we're going to be developing. We've got some findings. We got actual recommendations coming. And I think it was probably pretty well received first time.
But I
around.
think, Karen, what you were kind of getting to is, so this HAB recommendations city council letter that's drafted that talks about 6 points, what we've been doing the
Right.
last few months, and that we're forming a subcommittee. Maybe that's a sufficient way to communicate to city council, we're forming this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so this might be in writing and therefore it wouldn't be
Yes.
subtracting any time that Philip wants to present what the empty bedrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
what they need to know, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're paying attention to what they're doing with their consultant team, and we're gonna, you know, mark our recommendations to that. And then the meat of it is in the memo. With that, I think we can go on to the next item unless anyone has any other comments about the quarterly update, and we can turn it over to
Yeah, just on the quarterly update, I thought we were like gonna vote on a quarterly update tonight to send in June. I don't care if we don't. I just, that was my
one
one
really go.
So that's why we included that language in the memo to like pair it with whatever.
It's possible I dropped the ball. on-
Yeah, whatever other language
I
was
remember
there.
I left the last meeting saying I would do it or not, but.
And I know it's been like 2 months since we had a real meeting.
So the last page, I'm okay if we submit this to city council.
The
Like,
letter or the,
You're talking about the memo and almost,
one
yeah,
thing we
have
sent was
recommendations.
just a memo to this board. The other was a proposed letter to council.
So wait a minute, I definitely want to talk about the subcommittee. So I'm not talking about the subcommittee now because I have a bunch of comments that I want to talk about. But the one that says, dear members of city council, we've investigated, here are the 6 ideas based on what we've learned so far. Like, if we wanted to submit that, I'd be okay. Or if you want to wait and not submit anything until you've done more analysis, I'm okay with that too.
I want to submit this now.
The letter?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm fine with submitting the letter. I mean, we'd have to vote on it as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
board.
I think the
Collectively.
only question that I have, and this goes back to our subcommittee, is I'm not really sure I understand the difference between temporary housing and transitional housing. And so that's like the only word that I might want to edit out of that letter.
Where is that in that
The
letter?
very bottom. The subcommittee will investigate and make additional recommendations subject to approval by the Housing Advisory Board, and I'd be fine with like, period. As opposed to on temporary housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing.
I'm okay with if it's period after that.
Are you worried that we're gonna start talking about shelters? Is that your concern?
Well, I do, that is one of my questions, is what is the definition of temporary housing versus transitional housing? And so,
Are we still talking about the quarterly update or we? I mean,
Maybe we should circle back to the quarterly update after we do that, because the homelessness package has some stuff on the quarterly.
okay,
update.
my understanding with the quarterly update is that for the next meeting, you're gonna draft what you want to say mostly about the empty bedrooms.
Yeah.
And so nothing is being discussed today other than the strategy that we're gonna be able to vote on it next month of what the 2 minutes are that you're gonna talk about.
Would that, do we meet when, sorry, what am I trying to say? When do we meet in relation to when you would be able to attend the council meeting to?
Well, I mean, I can go anytime to a council meeting, so I mean, whatever. We just, I don't want to craft it in the meeting right now, so we'll just have to wait till after the June meeting, which I assume is at the end of June, and so it'll be sometime in July.
So council's on recess until July 24th.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So it sounds like you're going to council on July 24th, and in our June meeting, you're gonna come with a proposed statement that we'll all discuss and vote on.
And, we'll either, so it'll be, what I kind of go back with will be kind of be pending this discussion on homelessness and.
There might be a
I'll
few
probably come back
statements, we proposed a few sentences, but that doesn't have to be set in stone in the board packet.
Nor does it sound like it needs to be included in any way? Because we are going to
Okay.
submit this letter modifying the
That's
last
simplified. I don't
sentence.
have to consider that. That's makes my job easier.
So would you prefer we talk about the committees and its work first or what?
It makes sense, the committee first.
Great, I'm gonna get a little water and I'll take a picture and something. Need that before we jump in.
Did you know Molly from before? Did you just meet her tonight?
I was told by city staff recently
met,
that I was officially,
Reached out to her about the housing rehabilitation grant. And so,
Water.
and then connected with her about writing the letter of support. Good.
There you go.
Thank you.
Got it.
All right.
I was told by city staff recently that I'm a city official because of my role on HAB. You were talking about you have to take a chair off your LinkedIn account or whatever.
Yeah.
But I had made a joke that if I'm a city official, I'm updating my business card. It'd be like Philip Ogren, city official.
I once had a business card printed, and it was supposed to say freelance writer, because that's what I did, and it came back and it read freelance waiter.
You just,
I had written out the instruction by hand. I don't know where you have it. Okay, we're gonna turn it over to our new subcommittee chairs. The HAB subcommittee on housing solutions to homelessness to talk about what they're thinking about. We do have something in writing that will guide us. Which have that in front of it, or if you've ever reviewed it, so.
Okay, I'll just go over the high points and Chip, you can chime in and then you can ask whatever questions. So with the concept and how it was presented in the March meeting, but now it's kind of bulleted and in writing, so it'd be Chip and I as the subcommittee members. So this is the Subcommittee on Housing Solutions to Homelessness. So the goals are high level to offer assistance to the council with action items identified once they receive and have made those action items from the Clutch Consulting report. There was some concern about what happens if council doesn't give any directions. Then we can go through some topics and how we choose that. Hold that thought, we'll get to it. The focus again is only on housing solutions to homelessness. That's been really clear, I think. So the process is that HAB would review, what the first step is this letter, review it, approve it, send it. Then the hope is that HAB would receive word from council regarding those action items once they receive the Clutch report. Then the subcommittee would do the work, the homework. So again, the concept is that the subcommittee would be just offering assistance to do research or footwork or whatever it is to help council in their action items. Chip and I will then report to HAB, and then HAB collectively reports back to city council. So it's always that 3-step process. Council to HAB, to the subcommittee, back to HAB, back to the city council. Does that make sense? So as far as the topics, the number 1 priority is really those action items coming from city council. Cross our fingers that they give us some. But there's other options. We kind of divided it into temporary housing, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, funding, taking a look at front range services. So again, this came from Chip and I sitting down and what has been talked about in HAB over time and what we kind of brainstormed. So if council gives us an action item. I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of something. And it's like, how would we get funding to purchase mobile homes? I just made that up. Then we would look at what that could be. We report what we found back to HAB, and then HAB makes the official recommendation or report on what we found to City Council. If City Council does not give us action items and we need to kind of skip to that, where they don't give us, we would take a look at this. Chip and I would pick like 1 or 2 or 3 things, I don't know, come to HAB and say, hey, these are the 3 things that we were looking at, looking into. This is who we would talk to. This is what we're hoping to find out. What direction do you want us to go? And HAB collectively would say, please don't look into that. Don't waste your time. Please look at this specifically. And you should also talk to so-and-so. And we'd say, great. And then we do our homework, report back to HAB, HAB reports to City Council. Did I summarize that?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, and this is just the structure of the boards, is we don't make any recommendations on housing unless we vote on it and there's four people who say yes. And then it goes up. And when I say we, I mean the 7 of us or whoever shows up. But there needs to be 4 people in order for it to go to council. But if council sends directive on housing to the homelessness committee, Karen and I can meet, we can discuss it, we can come up with concrete talking points, present it to the entire board. That way it's a more streamlined, expedited process, and we're not spending 3 hours in every meeting talking about homelessness. Instead, we can talk for weeks or months or whatever, and then come and present to you guys maybe in 15 or 20 minutes. And it's a more expedited process. Of course, we would still solicit the feedback, and then if someone doesn't like it, they can speak up. But ultimately, that's the collective vote. And I'm hopeful, if this model works, maybe we can have other subcommittees for other issues as well. It just seems like this is maybe a more efficient way to tackle a specific issue than the collective 7 kind of being pulled on different issues all the time.
Well, it's good work. I have a question. Either you or both of you have been able to meet with anyone from Clutch, like in a focus group setting or interview? Did they reach out to you at all?
No.
We've only met with each other.
I think there'd be an opportunity, Jay, to do that.
I haven't had any interaction with Clutch.
Interesting.
I mean, I think we want to wait for their report, I think, before we bug them with anything.
Well, the reason I asked is a couple of.
Do you think we should meet with them before they?
Well, I mean, I've met with a couple of consultant teams, for example, non-housing issues on Civic Center and the cultural master plan, which now is called the Blueprint, I think. And, they're eager to get input from community members like yourselves. I'd be surprised if Clutch developed these ideas in a vacuum without consulting with key community members. Could be an opportunity.
Yeah, and I recall from that study session, there was some anger from certain council members that was the county level, what's it called? Boulder.
Solutions for Boulder County.
Yeah, that apparently there's certain council members did not feel that consulting group did enough to consult with people in the city. They were sort of critical of that.
Right.
They're like, who did you actually speak to? And there was some pushback there. So maybe for Clutch Report to be successful, if we reached out and said, well, we'll talk with you guys. What do you want to know?
Might be worth nosing around.
And it could be a 2-way street of where they say, well, these are the things we want. And we'll say, we'll present your questions to the entire Housing Advisory Board at the next meeting and report back. Their goal is to do the report by August.
It's going to be released sometime this summer.
Or was your thought that we just wait for the report and not meddle in the report? I'm not trying to meddle, but
Yeah.
like.
My thought was waiting for the report. It didn't occur to me that it would be a possibility to.
And didn't occur to me, maybe they should be at one of our meetings talking to us.
That would be cool if we could invite them to a meeting.
So maybe one of our One of our action items could be, let's reach out to Clutch and say, we're with the subcommittee. I mean, what do you think? I don't know exactly what they're doing. I just know they were hired to offer a consulting report.
So Jay, if we wanted them to present, would that be an intro you could?
Yeah, it would be Mark Wolf in the city manager's office. He's managing their contract. But if you have a specific request, I can.
I mean, my gut instinct, and I think what Karen was thinking too, I kind of want to see what their report is. And then be like, all right, I want to ask you more questions about what's on page 7 and 12, or we don't know, like. See what they have to say first and sort of react to it. I just don't know any more of how they're soliciting input from the community.
Or if I'm also not clear if they're still soliciting input.
Yeah, that could be done too. There was a comment during, they were like, we'll have this report in August, and then some city council felt like that was rushed.
Seems like it would benefit them to ground test some of their ideas before finalizing the report, and this would be sort of a safe environment to do that. I'd be in favor of reaching out and
I mean, it can't hurt
make the
for
invitation.
step one for us to just set up a casual Zoom meeting with them. And then maybe at the end of it, propose, would you like to present to the entirety of the Housing Advisory Board? No, you tell us.
Zoom with you too to check it out and then come.
Yeah, to make an introduction. Yeah, that's something we could do.
My vote would be that we let them finish their analysis
Yeah,
and we read it. And then we figure out, we offered to help, or we ask questions, or maybe they present. But I think right now, if we get involved, we're in theory sort of, I don't know if meddling is the right word, but I think.
what I expect
they
to
have
see, and I kind of agree with you, because what I expect to see from these reports is they make 100 recommendations. And then I think it really takes actual policy people to say, let's go with 5, 7, and 9. The reports are helpful that I see out of these consultants, but sometimes they're just so broad that it takes someone else to say, all right, how do we actually implement this? And the last report I saw was hundreds of pages, and I was like, this doesn't translate to actual policy. Someone needs to take this and synthesize it into application. So I kind of agree. I'd like to just sort of see, I expect it's gonna be some big report. And then it's sort of, I think, our job, all of us, to how do we break this down into actual policy recommendations?
So maybe, Jay, more the question is connecting with Mark and just asking if HAB can receive the report when council receives the report also?
He's gonna tell you to go to the council meeting.
Okay,
But I can ask.
you mean
if
to ask
they're-
council?
No, to go to, when they present to council.
Doesn't have to be an either or though, couldn't we attend council but also like to read the report?
Yeah, no, I mean, it'll be a public document.
Okay.
The report will be submitted as part of the council packet in
Okay.
advance.
Okay.
So we can read it, and then we can go to the council meeting where they present it. And Karen and I can meet, and we can come back to the board and say, all right, how do we break this massive report down into actual concrete policy recommendations to council? I think that's probably the goal. But as Karen said, our hope is we will get requests directly from council on things to focus on, because it's more likely to listen to our recommendations if they're consistent with what they want help on. And then we're gonna wait for the report, and then third, if we don't hear anything, we're gonna kind of tackle things on our own.
I'm looking at their website for the first time, and they only do consulting on this issue. They promise results. Including on tough issues like encampments.
Okay. So we can be hopeful.
So Anything more, the letter, you want to make an edit? to the
Actually,
letter?
I have a bunch of comments on the committee thing, but I don't wanna. Anybody else want, I don't mind being the last person to talk, so. Philip and Cindy, do you have any comments on the proposal? Okay. All right, couple things. The other possible topics, so you talk about temporary housing, but I don't quite know what that means. Like, how is that defined?
So All Roads offers temporary housing.
Sheltering, yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
I read in the news that there's that small shelter for minors that closed recently.
Together lost their funding. They closed yesterday or day before.
Yeah. And I've read in the news that
Huh?
All Roads is losing funding from the county and has to
So
cut
All
bed
Roads lost
space.
about $200,000, and so it's reduced its overnight beds from 180 to 160. Not because there isn't room, but because
Yeah.
they can't.
They need
they can't
support and
pay
stuff,
staff.
Yeah.
But my understanding is they're gonna continue their day services Monday to
Correct.
Friday, but then I'm gonna try to expand it to 7 days a week.
So one thing we have the power to do is collectively speak to council on budget. So
That was a county decision to cut.
Right. from the I know it wasn't the city that cut it, but we could tell the city step up. I know
So
that doesn't feel. But we're the city advisory board. We don't get to advise the county on stuff.
So what other questions do you have in
Okay, so
relation to this?
I'll go through all of them. So temporary housing, how is it defined? I thought we discussed, we didn't want to focus on sheltering. And then when you talk about what about other partnerships and faith groups? I think that relates to everything. Like that could relate to temporary housing, that could relate to transitional housing.
Yep.
That could relate to permanent supportive. So I feel like it could get moved somewhere else.
It can.
Can All Roads physically expand? You'd have to build a new building. There is a lot behind them, but I think you'd get a lot of objection from the neighbors about too much affordable housing in that neighborhood, and if they can't fund enough beds. I mean, I don't mind you asking, but I sort of
So
know.
let me just pause
Yeah.
right now. So these were just brainstormed ideas.
Yeah,
Really, the hope is that we're gonna get direction from council. And I understand that that might not happen,
yeah,
but this is a list. It can even be a document that we create that's a shared document that anybody could add to the list.
okay.
And again, if we don't get direction from council,
yeah.
then Chip and I will really look at these much more closely and come up with like a really solid
Okay,
proposed topic.
okay,
In relation to permanent supportive housing, we should look at blah, blah, blah,
okay,
and come up with 2 or 3 and see what the board wants us to dive into.
okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is
Don't
keep your
nitpick the
thoughts, but
regs.
don't get into
Okay.
the weeds on
This
this.
is a brainstorming document.
We're at the
Um,
coffee shop,
You know,
real
it's.
coffee.
I hear what you're saying on the shelter stuff, but the way we see it is let's leave all options on the table. From my perspective, I think for a lot of the shelter, getting into All Roads or whatever other shelter options are, that's step one in the process to eventually ending up at Bluebird or maybe in Boulder Housing Partners and being self-sufficient, you know, like it's how people get in. I know that there's different routes into this. You and I attend that meeting. I remember you took a picture of that like 20-lane highway. But I think we just need to lay out all options on the table. I don't think that sheltering should be off of it. Karen and I agree that, you know, a shelter is a form of housing. And I think most importantly, that one night someone goes in the shelter, they could get connected with a social worker that leads to much better, more permanent housing options from down the road.
Okay, so I recognize that a lot of what I'm talking about is more like editing and like maybe a little bit too nitpicky. So I'm gonna step back a little bit and say that some of the things that you have in specific categories really could apply to anything. Like,
Absolutely. I totally agree.
I'm very interested in converting vacant commercial space, and I'm very interested in pilot programs of the SROs and dorm-like space, and whether that's transitional or temporary or permanent, like big picture, I think those are really exciting things that I would be very supportive. I also think that when you talk about like Front Range services, what are other cities offering and where are they successful and what have they done? I think that's great. I think the other question is, if they're not doing anything, how can we encourage them to do things? Because I think that, this is a personal opinion, I think that Boulder is a magnet because we offer shelters and services and provide affordable housing. And so if I was a homeless person, I would come where I could get a meal, where I could get warm socks, where I could have a day shelter. So it's not just what are other communities doing and what can we learn from them, but how do we also encourage them to do their fair share so that Boulder isn't the only one that's addressing homeless.
So I did have that a little bit on a bullet point here. And thank you for sharing the two that were really important. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
That if we don't get direction from council and we have to take a whack at this ourselves,
Yeah.
that is exactly the kind of information that's helpful to us, that you, for example, would like us to see us look at these two things. Michael, what would you want us to see? Cynthia, what would you, what do you want?
That's why it's.
And
like
then
a
it would narrow
brainstorm.
down to a couple. So that's really helpful.
And one thing we discussed about is, we did that session on converting commercial to residential, but then we learned, if this is free market housing, there's a lot of obstacles, but it might be a lot easier if we're setting up, some sort of transitional space. So that's something we talked about. And then an idea that Karen brought up that I never thought of is, how can we do some sort of faith-based partnership? Obviously the city's not gonna tell faith groups what to do, but if there's faith groups who want to help out with this issue, they want that and they have that interest, is there some channel the city can set up to connect them with people? That's something that certain churches or synagogues or whatever might want. And if the city could be quite instrumental in that. And I just thought of that from when I worked for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They have entire office that when they come into a disaster, there's people who are staffed to partner with all the religious groups in the community that want to help and just don't really know exactly what to do. So can the city help provide resources and direction and connections with these faith groups that want to help with this problem? That was an idea that we kind of came up with. So yeah, part of this is just to share sort of what we're thinking and get feedback that we can consider.
So, and I'm not calling the question at all, but I'm just curious about where we're going with this. So you're gonna take this feedback, re-edit the document and bring it back to us next month, or this is not enough document we have to approve. You've started a committee, you're brainstorming, you've got great ideas.
Yeah, one of the documents is literally for the pleasure of you guys to
Right.
read, so we can all talk about it. It's sort of our update
Okay.
to the board for our 10-minute session. This is what we're thinking.
Just wanted
So
to
do we have
clarify what
to
you were
vote
looking
on a
for.
committee? Like, I'm okay with saying I'm supportive of,
I feel
There
like we
being a
did that
committee.
Yeah,
in
we
March.
did
We
that.
did that in
We
March.
did that. The only thing we need to vote on is, do we approve the letter that we're proposing sending to council?
Mhm.
That's something we have to vote on. The other document is an informational document to the board, just to facilitate discussion. There's nothing to vote on there.
And then our next step is, we'll meet again and probably continue on with our brainstorming and drinking coffee. And then we're instant.
I throw down the expensive stuff when I
And
go to
then-
coffee shops.
And then we're essentially patiently waiting for the clutch report.
Right. And my only question, I think it's a good letter. I do wonder if we're jumping the gun on our own intent, given the desire to cherry pick the clutch report and make
I
more
don't-
recommendations.
I
based
don't
on
think
that.
so, because actually I feel like the majority of the letter is talking about what we've been doing in the last
Yeah.
few months in relation to this topic.
Okay, I'm good with that. I just wanted to raise that point.
I think we also want to signal to council, look, you have a resource here that's ready. to hit the ground running. You know, so
We're interested, look
Yeah.
at what we've been doing, yeah.
we're ready and we're prepared.
Well, I would be supportive of the letter if we just do the period after Housing Advisory Board and take out temporary housing transitional.
So
and
the
permanent.
very last sentence,
Yeah.
the subcommittee will investigate and make additional recommendations subject to approval by the Housing Advisory Board, period.
I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with that.
Well, we could vote in the letter. I want to go back to your mission statement and see if folks have any comments about some of the directions. We'll keep talking about that for a few minutes.
Again, the process is to solicit feedback. So like when Karen said, we're not voting on anything, but when you say, I want to focus, I like this idea of conversions as it applies to the homelessness issue. That's something that's helpful for us. So we know where everyone is.
I personally would want to think more about Karen's comment on temporary housing, because I think you made a great point that temporary housing is going to be the beginning of a transition to permanent housing. So it doesn't hurt to keep thinking about it. Decide later whether that leads to an actual recommendation.
Right.
Well, and we'll see if council wants us to dig into that.
Other than that, I think it's a good memo to provide a framework for what you want to talk about.
I would just mention that, like Karen, I'm also very interested in piloting SROs. That's something that sparks my imagination and interest.
Thank you.
Do you have any thoughts, Cindy?
Not right now, though. It's-
Okay. Any other comments on what I'll call the memo? And are there other comments on the letter other than a few edits that have been suggested and accepted?
I just want to acknowledge that the main body of this letter was drafted by Karen. I like added a couple of sentences. This is not me. I just want to acknowledge
I don't
that.
need any
She
credit.
was angling to be chair.
Look at you did it.
Then I'll just note, I feel like I don't offer any recommendations or participate when it comes to funding for eviction prevention services. I've disclosed that as a conflict when I applied for this board, so I recuse myself from that portion of the letter. I did not add that in there. I think it says something like continue funding. I just take no position on that.
Do we feel like we're ready to vote on the letter?
I'll make a motion that we submit this letter to council about what we've learned about housing solutions for homelessness.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. We'll be submitting this letter to council. I guess that will come from me because I'm still chair for a few more minutes.
You guys can,
I can't imagine they'll scrutinize the signature.
Michael, I will make that edit that Karen requested, or you can, it's editable.
I think we voted on it as amended, but that is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, see what's left on the agenda. Good work. Let's see,
Work plan.
work plan.
Oh, so next month there's a homework assignment, right? That review the video?
we were gonna watch the video,
Ah,
the whole thing,
okay. Great.
and then have a discussion about it.
And do we have someone lined up to do the housing legislative update?
Yes, I believe Brian confirmed, right?
Brian, that's right, Brian from Housing Colorado, great.
So we should
Yeah, I
find
don't know,
out
we need to
first.
put it in the work plan, but we'll be looking at our statement to be read to council as part of a quarterly report. Mhm. July, it looks like, actually July, we have to remember the quarterly report up there, that's when the report will be made in July, correct?
Let's start discussing the next one.
So the video you're talking about, is that the Housing Equity Symposium? Is we watch that and then we come here and talk about it next meeting?
We would actually just watch it during the meeting.
Okay, together.
Is that the one that was at E-Town?
Yeah.
It's like 3 hours, the whole thing,
We're not
right?
doing 3 hours.
Okay.
We're doing Clay Fong's presentation on the history,
Okay.
which is 40 minutes, I think, as I recall.
I read in the news that, I don't know if they've got the signatures, but there's an initiative out there to, you know, how we recently recommended to make it more accessible to do duplexes and triplexes and single family lots. I read that there's now an initiative for the ballot in November that someone's collecting signatures for to make there be an affordable housing element to that.
It's been withdrawn.
It's been withdrawn.
Oh, no, really? Gone the way of close West End. Yep. I thought there was another ballot issue underway along the lines of all development has to pay its own way.
That was withdrawn as well, both of them.
Oh, really?
I just read that yesterday.
Okay.
And is that something like when there's citizen-led ballot initiatives, does city council often weigh in on that and like take positions in an official capacity?
No, they don't take a position, but they have to vote to put it on the ballot.
Right.
And the city attorney's office typically will work with people who drive, well, film notices.
Yeah.
The people who are advancing, they can override city council, right? And get it on the ballot. You don't need city council's blessing to get a referendum on the ballot, right?
No, but
I think it's like certifying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more, they have to approve what goes on the ballot, but they don't say, no, we don't think this is a good idea. We're not gonna put this on the ballot.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
My limited experience with this, my wife got involved with the 2A, which is to renew a sales tax and provide money for arts and culture. And although they got it certified the required number of signatures, this was sort of created Boulder. It did turn into a negotiation with council, the actual split of the money and the ballot language, which I think was at least at the time, seemed like a pretty good outcome. So there's room for compromise.
I probably don't need to.
Philip, I know there's some airport.
Phil can tell you some stories.
But in any event, I guess it's a moot point if it's not on the ballot.
City council can weigh in in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
We've got a upcoming item on the work plan on the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. And I attended a focus group on that a few weeks ago. It was really informational. I got some information out of it. A lot of it was putting ideas on sticky notes and then putting dots on the sticky notes, which is a process I think we're all pretty familiar with. So we'll see what happens next, but seems like an upside opportunity. I haven't really had a real definition of where it's going. But you have any enlightenment on that, Jay?
No, we're still working on synthesizing those hundreds and hundreds of sticky notes to develop a portfolio of ideas. So you'll hear more in August or September. One of those.
It's like we've got something coming up on impact fees for demolitions and additions, which is something we've talked about conceptually in this group. I think the idea being if you build a really big house, you gotta pay more of a fee to get that through, and the fee would go into affordable housing. This is still the concept.
Yep, same concept, but it'll be an ordinance specific recommendation to council.
And I think I heard that the other idea out there, which was to have a tax on vacant properties, second homeowners, is being put off.
Put off till next year.
And why is that? Just curious.
I did not listen to the council discussion, but I think that was sort of a compromise, is my understanding.
I read something in the Boulder Reporting Lab that they put too many referendums on the ballot and people are like, no, 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 so.
Too many.
Yeah, you gotta pick, so I think they had other things that are being prioritized, it's my understanding.
That's something they can't just vote on as a council that, because it's a tax, it has to go to the voters.
Yeah, and it's also questionable whether or not will immediately get sued.
From what I understand, there's a solid possibility of that, like, I don't know, I was just, when I hear like, oh, if you're converting a house, like, the idea is that, for example, what we have for developers is, the idea is you're supposed to set aside a portion of the development for affordable housing. And then you have an option to opt out of that and pay money, right?
Right.
But if you're just expanding your home, is there an option to set aside a portion of your home for affordable housing?
No, that's why it's an impact
You
fee.
can do an ADU.
Right, but you get what I'm saying, if you're putting on an addition to your home, it's not like a portion of that can go to affordable housing, so it would be just a fee, right?
But in theory, we could say something like, if you're building a house that's greater than 5,000 square feet, then there's a tax on the
Well, right, that's a
square footage
tax.
above that.
That's a tax.
And that tax or that fee will go
That's called a
towards.
fee, right?
And under
subsidizing.
our state constitution, the government cannot raise taxes unless the people who are being taxed say, yes, I want to be taxed more.
And you need to
But we can
tax
do fees.
people fairly and equally. You can't discriminate just because someone's able to pay more.
Right.
What we should, this is like
Anyway,
a whole
yeah,
other
other
discussion.
So there's also the CU master plan, which was confirmed. So Lori Cole and the
Oh,
one of the assistant chancellors will be here to talk about all of their housing plans,
Love
which
to
is
see
doing a
that.
lot.
when's
Wow.
that?
August.
That's August.
August,
Oh,
oh,
that's
good,
great.
thank you.
Wonderful.
And does that include like the whole discussion of flood mitigation and is it like, isn't there some additional controversy about that?
There's always controversy about CU South, but they'll talk about, yeah, their housing plans for CU South.
Okay.
But that's still pretty far out. But they have more immediate plans as well.
And then one thing I'd like to add to other areas to explore at the bottom is mobile home parks. It sounds like there's just a lot of interest to that, and we have a new board member who I think is probably very informed and educated on mobile home park issues. I think that's an area of housing that often goes overlooked. And perhaps that's something we should pay attention to a little bit more. I think tonight was just the tip of the iceberg of us figuring out we're interested in this, but maybe we can make recommendations to council.
Actually, do you remember when we were at the veterans site in Longmont, that at the very end, there was this vehicle that was like a self-contained apartment, but it was definitely on
tiny.
It
wheels.
was like their show,
Tiny
showroom
home.
kind of.
Like, and I
Which is
want,
defined by law now in Colorado, the difference.
cause like, I think that would be a cool addition or whatever. I mean, that definitely wouldn't. That, in my mind, that is affordable housing. It is mobile. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it goes around, comes around. I think that was one of our first HAB recommendations when I
Tiny home
joined the board,
village.
which was to be, and I can't remember the details of it so much, but to make it easier for homeowners to configure their parking pads with utilities so that the tiny homes on wheels could come right in and be like instant ADU.
I think one thing that's important to understand is that a lot of these mobile homes in our community, whole families live in them,
Right.
with children and everything. A tiny home, no one has 5 kids and a tiny home. you
True,
know,
but a
it's-
bunch of the people who are at the shelter,
Right,
they're not families.
right, so it's,
Right.
I think it's a different demographic.
All I'm saying is like, I think tiny homes might be something we'd want to add to this list of potential future topics.
I feel like that's been on the HAB list not that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, there was a recommendation
I could probably pull it out. It never went to council. I think Danny is the only person that would have remembered that.
I won't get into it here. I've had a lot of experience with tiny homes.
Maybe that's a
I
future.
mean, in the city of Boulder, to do like a tiny home park, for example, it has to be the same zoning and everything as a mobile home park, true?
Yeah, so what Hab looked at were tiny homes on wheels, as same as you would have a detached accessory dwelling unit in your backyard. So not a tiny home village.
Okay, okay.
That's a whole separate issue, discussion. The city council has had many discussions about tiny home villages.
On wheels or not on wheels?
Doesn't matter.
Sorry.
Everybody loves the idea of tiny homes.
I think it's a trendy thing right now.
So then when they get into it, they're like, wow, this is a really inefficient use of land.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very expensive, and it's still a temporary, it's still transitional housing. It's not a permanent
can't put
housing
it-
solution.
Can't put a tiny home in a mobile home park.
Right.
It's against the
Right.
rule. It's against the city code.
So spending our energy more on mobile homes would be more better use of our time.
Manufacturing.
But one of the things that I was thinking, and maybe this is like, we don't want to talk about it tonight, but like, if it takes 3 years to develop permanent supportive housing, right? And in the meantime, you have people who aren't allowed to encamp anymore. They're being moved along to somewhere else. So like, if there was, let's just call it like a Walmart parking lot where you could put a, like a facility that has bathrooms and showers, and people had, instead of car camping, there were these tiny homes on wheels that people could stay in for 3 months, 6 months, and it's supervised, then like, in my mind, that's better than encampments. But it's not a permanent solution, and it's not a mobile home park, but it's better than sleeping in a tent.
So I
Anyway,
think we learned at the Veterans Project that that's $70,000 per unit solution.
wait, the home or the
No.
truck? The on
The
wheels or
home.
not on wheels?
So I don't think they were on wheels, they were.
The one on
And we
the-
saw one
The
on
one on the
wheels.
wheel was their like showcase. It was so they could go to places to show off essentially what they have.
I'm just saying, if you want to talk about that, you have to look at the cost benefit of spending 70 versus say 120 and getting something that's more like a quote unquote real home.
That someone could live in for a long time.
Yeah. And more people.
I don't want to talk about it tonight because, but
But that's
if you
really
wanted to
where,
add it.
what it comes down to is you spend a lot of money for that tiny home or on wheels, or even that tiny home village. And for a little bit more, you could have a permanent solution.
A real,
That's what I
And it
was
sounds like
getting
for
at.
an affordable.
from what
price,
I've
another
seen,
mobile
the
home.
tiny homes are kind of like a
Manufactured.
glammy thing, like I'm in my early 20s and I want this tiny little house that looks like a ski lodge and it has all these luxury features. I've seen a lot of that on like TikTok and Instagram, like, it's that, I feel like that's the tiny home market, because it's kind of
There was actually a guy who tried to develop that idea using dumpsters.
yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna let the next chair deal with that and the next update to the work plan.
It's your problem.
I just wanted to
Anybody has
ask-
any final questions before we go to matters from
I-
staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we do another like tour this summer? It seems like.
Sure, you want to do a bike tour?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and like, yeah, where should we go? Should we do some of the? I mean, a few of us got to go to like Raleigh Flats, but not everybody did. What if we did like? I don't know, Raleigh Flats?
Would it make sense to
Ciclo and-
drive around and look at the various mobile home parks and
or the mobile
see how
home
they're
park?
different?
So I think that it is private property. So
Oh,
I think we have to be sensitive. We need permission from them. It's their park. We can't just be like,
Could we
the
get,
government's here to inspect.
Yes.
could we get
Can we do a
permission to
bike tour?
visit Mapleton and learn more about that? Okay, and then last year we did do.
Yes, then.
Rosa.
I'm happy to organize a bike tour, driving tour, whatever you guys want to do.
But you go back to the factory, you gotta choose.
We can I think you should come volunteer at the factory.
I think that would be so fun.
I was there Saturday.
I think the factory is very interesting. I think a lot of good can come out of that.
How about a bike tour and a volunteer day?
I wish we bike to the modular factory and you guys volunteer.
Sounds perfect.
I'll drive to the factory. Too much lawyering, people getting hit by cars in my life.
There's a dedicated bike path the entire way.
Is there along Arapahoe?
No, you follow pretty close.
Oh, along Boulder Creek back there.
And then your sidewalks for the 2 blocks.
Gotcha.
Anybody else on the work plan? Matters from staff?
I don't have anything specific to.
Okay, so, meeting debrief, we had a great, presentation, from Molly Taylor on the manufactured housing strategy. We had a wonderful icebreaker orchestrated by Vice Chair Hoskin. I never have to say her first name again. We elected a new chair and vice chair. We talked about the HAB quarterly member update to council, which we will review and vote on next month. We heard a great presentation from our new subcommittee on housing solutions for homelessness and approved a letter with recommendations to send to the council. We reviewed the HAB work plan and made some suggestions for future additions to the work plan. We had no matters from staff. And the next meeting is Wednesday, June 25th in the same place. Correct? Correct. But we also talked about a bike tour this summer and possibly doing some volunteering at the factory.
You should decide if you want to do that instead of a meeting or in addition to.
In addition, what do you think, Chair?
I don't know, we've got our meetings pretty booked up. What would that be? August? Oh,
Might want to wait till September when it cools down a little bit.
Yeah,
I think in September.
great. Well, thank you, everyone. And do I hear a motion to adjourn? 8:56.
I'll make a motion to adjourn ahead of 9 o'clock.
Second.
All in favor?
Ah.
Go home and
Thank you, Tiffany, for dinner.
Thank you.